All right, guys, welcome to Press X Podcast, episode 80. 80 episodes we've been doing of this podcast. Appreciate you guys waiting patiently, as always, for the podcast to start. We have, let me see. Yeah, so we have more topics than you would have thought to discuss today, but they're going to be a little bit more diverse than usual. I'm sure many of you are aware that this week has essentially been completely dead when it comes to PlayStation news in particular. I mean, I feel like news in general has been almost non-existent, but regarding PlayStation, it's been particularly quiet. So I think it's to be expected. We've had a couple of high weeks, and so now it's the slow time, the slow period. I do have to wonder how long it's going to go on for, though. I mean, you know what? It's nice, though, because there hasn't been a ton of rumors and leaks this past week, which, I mean, there have been some. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today pertains to a rumor, but I feel as though it's certainly worth talking about because we have to do a bit of a follow-up. Did I see the Batman trailer? I did. I think it looks good. It's not getting me as excited as I expected it to, but I did like what I saw from the trailer. So, you know, I'm a big Batman fan, so it's just kind of like, hey, a new Batman movie. Doesn't look. I like that they're going for like a really dark tone, though. I do like that. It reminded me of the Nolan movies, you know, the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. It definitely gave me more of like, okay, there's a more serious, darker tone with that. You know, I did like Ben Affleck as Batman as well. I did like his performance as Batman. So it's really, you know, Christian Bale did a great job. It's going to be really interesting to see how Robert Pattinson does as as Batman. I don't think anybody would have ever seen him as Batman, and yet here we are. He's Batman. So I still can't believe Michael Keaton is reprising his role as Batman as well in the upcoming Flash movie. To me, that's just crazy. Everybody's saying I look so different. Is it because I got more of like a goatee look going on? Is it because of the red shirt? It's the stash. Yeah. I just decided to go with this look, you know. I appreciate it, you know. I appreciate the stash. Okay, so as I said, we have some topics to talk about. I'm going to give you I'm not going to do, you know what? Here's the thing. I feel like every week I do like a long rundown of the topics that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to do that only because there is... You're saying I look bright today? Yeah, I forgot to shut the curtain over there, but it's whatever. It's natural light, you know? So, but I'm not going to do a big rundown of the topics because every time I do that, I feel like we end up missing at least one or two of those topics for whatever reason. And so if you don't know what those topics are, then you won't know that you missed them. Although I do have them written in the description. So if you want to know the topics that we're going to be discussing, take a look in the description. All right, so before we dive into the first topic that I want to discuss, because it's an interesting one that I saw a few people bringing up and they were asking me to talk about it, to read it with you guys and kind of react to it and give my thoughts on it. So we'll do that. But before I do that, I want to give a shout out to my higher member tiers. And so as you guys know, if you want to help support the channel, there's a few ways for you to do that. I mean, you just watching the content and interacting with it is obviously supporting it. Leaving the podcast or the videos a like certainly helps it. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. Leaving a comment and all that stuff, it helps. If you want to go above and beyond, you can become a channel member. There are 3 different tiers. I'm going to be completely honest. I have not been fulfilling any specific channel member perks, which I do apologize for. It's been busy lately. I'll put it that way. I've had a lot going on, so it's been tough to even put thought into what I'm going to do. I hope to improve upon that in the future. So that's why I have to really give a sincere thank you to all of my channel members who are sticking around, who are continuing to support my channel on a monthly basis, because you guys are the real deal. You're here to just support the content that I make and keep the channel flowing. And so really have to give a big thank you to all of my members for that. But with that being said, we have the Play Has No Limits Plus tier. These are individuals who are truly going above and beyond on a monthly basis to support what I do here. So big shout out and thank you to Junior Jackson, Samuel Payne, Josh Z, Agile Ice 24, Anthony Ramos, Skin Tight Salmon, PlayStation Pete, RU46N2 Ray, iSiler 18, Chlorian A is what I'll have to call you, and Whiskey Gaming. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate it. We also have the Play Has No Limits tier, which is the second highest tier, and certainly appreciate all the support I'm getting from you guys as well. Shout out to Avengers Endgame, John Renzi, Black Waifus, Adrian D, AWS Asher, Zanarkand Blitzer, Ivanoa Kachofel, Space Gambler Jr., AJ Saeed, Rune Gasodin, JDTV, Quantum Stardust, Sir Speaks a Lot, Ashorty Faye, Ryan Butcher, Big Norman 0518, Shaky Shako, Tyson Webb 509, Black Manta 1989, Sane JT, Brandon Chad Perez, and Adrian Lupton. Again, big thank you. Really appreciate it, guys. And I also want to give a shout out to Devil Shooter for continually each week doing the timestamps for the podcast, which I, as well as many others in the community, find extremely helpful. So big shout out to you, Devil Shooter. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your life to do that and help the community out. I'm sure everybody is appreciative of that. But with that being said, we are going to dive into the first topic. And I did forget to mention another way you can support the channel, as I have it as the pinned comment here in the chat. If you want to donate a super chat, that helps as well. But the first topic, we're talking about, well, actually, you know what? I'm a little bit torn right now, because I was thinking about diving right into the topics, or I was thinking about starting off the show with 5 community submissions. Because I think I have a total of 7 or 8 community submissions. I was almost contemplating doing like 5 up front, then we could do the topics, and then we could end with another 3. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that that sounds like a good way to, a good cadence for the show, I guess? Or should I just dive into the topics and then do the community submissions? I feel like I should have had this sorted out before I went live, but I kind of forgot that I had all of these submissions. Game videos, you're asking what community submissions. So every week, if you go to the community tab on my channel, I have a community submissions where you can post your questions, any thoughts you have, opinions, whatever it may be, and there's a chance I may select it and read it during the community submissions part of the podcast. So look out for that each week if you didn't know about it. So you know what? I'll start with the submissions. Because they're more like unpredictable. I'll say we'll start with 5. Maybe we'll do 3 and then we can end with 5. We'll see where we're at after 3. So we'll start out with community submission number 1. Let me bring it up here. And this comes from Kyle San. He says, here are all the realistic PS5 console exclusives that could happen over the next year, pending announcements. I'm throwing out anything associated with Konami since it's unproven, and other unannounced rumors like BioShock 4. Hopefully this will spark some conversation since the news is light. Yeah, isn't that the truth? There is essentially very little news this week. So it's, I was almost contemplating whether or not I wanted to do the podcast, but that's why I was kind of like, you know what? Let's do some community submissions. So here are the games as of right now. So he lists Solar Ash, which got delayed to December 2nd. But looking at 2022, we have Horizon Forbidden West, February 18th. Sifu, February 22nd. Gran Turismo 7, March 4th. We have Stray, which is slated for early 2022. Forspoken, which is coming out in spring. Little Devil Inside, no release date. Season, no release date. Project Awakening, no release date. I highly doubt that game is going to be coming in 2022. That would seemingly come out of nowhere. God of War Ragnarok, no release date. Final Fantasy 16, no release date. Tchia, I don't know what game this is, but no release date. And so that's pretty much the lineup that we're currently looking at for PlayStation in 2022. So I guess, he just kind of wants to know my thoughts on this lineup. And let me look at this here. So I think what's strange as of right now, because he does list Solar Ash. Apparently Solar Ash, as far as I'm aware, is going to be the last PlayStation console exclusive that's launching for the year. And that's not coming out till December 2nd. I think it's so weird the way this year is ending for PS5, because I feel like up until this point, things have been so strong. And I really do believe that Sony was hoping to get Horizon Forbidden West out the door before the end of the year. Because if you look at the holiday season for Sony, there's pretty much nothing outside of Solar Ash. Now, some people have pointed out that this is kind of traditional for Sony. Sony is kind of known to not really release titles of theirs during the holiday season. They usually release it right before the holiday season or earlier in the year, which I guess if you look at the way Sony's been operating the past couple of years, that's certainly true. So I can't say it's that surprising, but it just makes me wonder, and I've been saying this, like, what exactly is Sony going to do between now and, I guess, the beginning of 2022? I think that there's certainly a chance they could kind of just lay low and coast. I think that they could very easily do that. Obviously, I'm hoping they do more than that, and we do have the Game Awards to look forward to. But when I look at the lineup for 2022, I mean, let's be honest right now. 2022, in terms of game releases as of right now, is looking completely overwhelming. I don't know how you guys are feeling about it, but personally, I'm feeling like, where am I going to find all the time and money for these games that are all coming out at seemingly not the same time, but they're all so close to one another. And so he doesn't list Elden Ring here, but it kicks off with Elden Ring in January. But the year is going to get off to, I think, the strongest possible start for Sony, considering we're looking at Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West, I don't know who's looking at that game and thinking, it's not going to do that well. I think people are going to approach Horizon Forbidden West the same way that they approach pretty much any other big PlayStation exclusive, that being that they're going to be excited. They're going to go out there, they're going to buy the game, they're going to support it. I don't think anybody's expecting Horizon Forbidden West to get weak review scores. So I think it's all around Horizon Forbidden West is going to be a really good way for Sony to kick off the year for PlayStation. And I think from that point forward, it's only going to get better. So right after that, we have Sifu, which, to me, I think Sifu is going to be really good. You guys know I'm very excited for that. And God, man, I'm just looking at this right now. Horizon Forbidden West, February 18th, and then Sifu, February 22nd. Like, how am I going to play these games, man? That's just too close to one another. I mean, and then you have GT7 on March 4th. So, I mean, Horizon Forbidden West and GT7 are very close to one another. They're very close to one another. You could even say maybe they're too close to one another. I don't think that's the case, because GT7 is a very different game from Horizon Forbidden West. So there's a big separation there. But, I mean, guys, right up front, Horizon, Sifu, GT7, all within 3 weeks of one another, 3 to 4 weeks of one another. I mean, that is a very, very, very strong start for PlayStation in 2022. GT7 is going to do huge numbers, man. We don't talk about GT7 too much here on the channel because it's just not a game that I haven't really played GT in the past. I am somewhat interested in it. A lot of people have encouraged me to give it a chance and try to get into it. It seems like it might be a little bit difficult because I hear it's more of a strict simulation game. My experience has been with games like Forza Horizon, so I don't know if I would be able to adjust to it. But one thing I have learned since covering PlayStation is that the GT community is absolutely massive. There is a huge community of GT fans that are just very much passionate about the game. And it's crazy to think that GT is the best selling PlayStation franchise ever. It's the biggest and best selling PlayStation franchise. So the fact that we're getting Horizon Forbidden West and GT7 back to back within about a month of one another, less than a month, actually, it's pretty much like 2.5, 3 weeks apart. That's crazy, man. I hope Sony has a lot of PS5s ready to sell at that time because, dude, they're going to start flying. I mean, they're already flying off the shelves, obviously, but once they start releasing these games, people are really going to be looking to upgrade if they haven't already. Michelle Butts, you're saying, will consoles become more available once PS5 only games come out, or will controlled early access events be the new norm until bots are under control? I think that's a really good question. I want to say that I feel like ideally I want to say, yeah, they're going to become more widely available once PS5 only games come out. But as we're seeing, there's like you point out, these controlled early access type things where it's like, if you want a PS5 right now, there's a process involved. And I think that what most people want, and it makes sense, is you just want to be able to, if you wake up on payday and you have enough money to buy a PlayStation 5, you just want to be able to do so. You don't want to have to jump through any hoops whatsoever. There are people who I've seen where they're like, I'm tired of hearing about the scarcity issue, and I'm tired of hearing people complain about how hard it is to get, one, whether it's through a retail chain or PlayStation directly, or, through scalpers and whatnot, and fighting with bots. And I understand why some people are getting tired of hearing that, but we have to also realize that it just shouldn't be this way. And I don't think anybody was anticipating that it would be this way. Sony wasn't anticipating it. Microsoft wasn't. AMD wasn't. It's kind of, once we were full swing into the pandemic, people started to realize, like, okay, this might be a serious issue. But to answer your question, I do think that by the time PS5 only games start to drop, I do sincerely believe it will be easier for people to get a PS5. I really do think that they will be more readily available. I could see a situation by the time Spider-Man 2 comes out in 2023. I could see a situation where PlayStation Direct is still a thing. By that point, I think it'll be expanded outside of the US. At least you would hope so. I still think that there are going to be a lot of accounts on Twitter and YouTube channels dedicated to getting people hooked up with PS5s. But I do sincerely believe that by that point, because I think 2023 is going to be the first year we start seeing more PS5 only exclusives, like the big hitters like Spider-Man, and I'm sure there are others we don't know about yet. I really do believe that that it will be easier. If not, then I mean, geez, by that point, I guess the scarcity problem will have lingered much longer than anybody could have anticipated. That would be pretty bad. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Black Waifus, you're saying, finally here live. Been hella busy lately. Have a great week, everyone listening. Well, thank you so much for that, man. I'm glad you could be here with us. It's a more of a quiet week, but nonetheless, we're all appreciative of the community we have here. Thank you for the super chat. Savage Giraffe 1, you're saying PlayStation is in high gear. Yeah, so, thank you for the super chat. Getting back to this first community submission, as I said, looking at the first couple of months of 2022, basically the first 3 months, PS5 is, like you said, they're kicking it in high gear, starting with Horizon. But then when you look beyond that, what's crazy to me is this. Okay, so it's not crazy, but it's exciting. is we're looking at Stray. That's going to be early 2022. Forspoken, as of right now, is targeting spring. And I think Forspoken is going to be a pretty big title for Sony. And I think it has a ton of potential. I think that a lot of PlayStation fans who are big fans of the first 3 Uncharted games, knowing that Amy Hennig is part of the writing team for Forspoken, I think has definitely interested a lot of people. But the gameplay of Forspoken looks really good. I think Forspoken has the potential to be like a big game that drops in like May or June. And at that time, here's the big question, and I don't mean to bring it back to this, but it just fascinates me because it looks like Sony has a very strong 2022, but we know that at some point they're going to have to make more announcements. They're going to have to announce more titles. I mean, if we are having that strong of a start to the first half of 2022, and then that leads into, I guess, maybe a big event that Sony has planned for the middle of June or something like that, it's difficult for me to say whether or not that's something we should anticipate because Sony hasn't been doing that lately. But I mean, it's only going to get better, right? How many games does Sony currently have that aren't announced that are set for 2022? I mean, God of War Ragnarok, that I could see that being a big summer game for Sony. I could see it coming out in July or June or July, maybe August. I do wonder if Sony would want to save God of War till like September or October. I could see that happening as well. Final Fantasy 16, another huge one where it's like, I mean, I guess it is going to come out next year. A lot of people are thinking it's going to. Is it going to be the first half of 2022, second half? I could see it being a second half game. I don't think it's going to come out the first half. But I think at this point in time, we can all kind of come to the agreement that Sony has a very strong lineup for 2022 so far, but it could be stronger. In that, I mean, I think there's going to be more game announcements that we get between now and, I mean, I guess as we're going through 2022, where they're going to drop these games within that year, within the time frame of it being announced. I could be wrong about that, but there's something I meant to talk about on the last episode of my podcast that I didn't get around to talking about. I'll mention that in a second. We have Savage Giraffe again. You're saying, I'm having a good feeling that PSVR 2 is going to sell well and be a huge leap above the first VR. I agree with you, Savage Giraffe. I think that the next iteration of PSVR, I mean, everything we've heard of it so far, it sounds like it's a monumental leap forward compared to the first headset. And I think that, you know, you talk about it's selling very well. I could certainly see it outselling the first iteration of the headset. And the reason for that is I don't think it's going to be cheaper. If anything, I think it has the potential to be more expensive. But the reason I think it has the potential to sell better is because people are going to be, I think, very impressed with the tech. And I think that the tech is naturally going to allow them to create games for PSVR that are just looking way better than anything we saw on PSVR 1. And I think that alone is really going to catch the attention of a lot of people like myself, who I didn't play the first iteration of PSVR, but I've heard nothing but good things about it. So I think you're on to something there, Savage Giraffe. Okay, so before I end with this first community submission, the thing I wanted to mention is I meant to make a video on this. I must have just forgot about it. I meant to talk about it during the last episode of the podcast. I meant to make a video on it. But essentially what we saw was on Reset Era, there was a thread, a post that somebody created where they essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but what they basically said was, isn't it disappointing to think that by the time we get to Spider-Man 2, which will presumably come out later in 2023, probably September or October of 2023, isn't it kind of sad to think that we've only had one truly original and unique PS5 only exclusive? And, you know, obviously most of us don't agree with that, the title of that thread. It just seems like, I mean, I guess if that's the case, if that's how you look at it, then yeah, I guess it is kind of depressing to think that. However, a developer from Sucker Punch actually responded within this thread. And what they said, again, I'm paraphrasing, is they came out and they said, so let me get this straight. You think that Sony doesn't have any other games to announce between now and the launch of Spider-Man 2? And in my opinion, what the developer was clearly trying to hint at and what he was clearly trying to convey is not just the fact that obviously Sony has more games to announce. Nobody's questioning that. But he specifically was talking about this in a thread that focused on PS5 exclusives. Now, Forspoken is a PS5 only title, but that's a second party title. That's not from Sony's first party. And so I just thought that was very interesting. There's not too much to be extracted from that because it's not like the developer came out and said, and let me give you the list of games that Sony plans to release. There is also Wolverine. That's going to be a PS5 exclusive, but I don't think there's much point in talking about Wolverine too much now because it seems like it's many years away. So that got me, pretty excited because, there's if you look at that thread, there are seemingly people who sincerely believe that, hey, Sony isn't going to have any more games. Brian, I see you mentioning Demon Souls, but we have to understand that the title of the thread, if I'm not mistaken, was focused on original games, which the only PS5 exclusive right now, well, actually, there's Returnal as well. There's Returnal. So we have Returnal and we have Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and there's Astrobot. So I don't know. I think that thread was being a little bit egregious now that I think about it. There's more PS5 only titles than you would think, but I understand that right now, a lot of PlayStation 5 owners are, we're excited for God of War. We're excited for Horizon. We're excited for 2022, but we're also just as excited and eagerly anticipating, like, Sony, when are you going to start announcing some of those other PS5 exclusives that we know you have cooking behind the scenes? We want to know. We want a glimpse. We want just a little peek, just a little idea. And it seems like Sony's very much playing it close to the chest. But it's the interesting thing about this, and this is where I'll just say this last word so I'm spending too much time on a single community submission, but to kind of end this, I think that we can all agree on two things. And if you disagree, let me know why. We can agree that 2022 for Sony, and specifically PlayStation's lineup, is looking really strong as is. And I think we can all agree that it's only going to get better because Sony is going to have more announcements to make, whether that be for games for release in 2022 or beyond that. But either way, there's going to be more. I think we can all, at the very least, agree on that. Okay, so that was community submission number 1. I wasn't anticipating it would take that long to answer or go over, but it was a good one. So let me see. The second community submission is from the Mr. Boisden. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but he says, do you think we will see Sony's answer to Game Pass next year? And how do you think that will realistically, or what do you think that will realistically look like? And would you subscribe to it? That would also be in line with Jim Ryan's comments about reaching 100 million gamers. Keep up the great work. Well, thank you so much. I'll do my best to keep it flowing here. But I thought this was a good question because, I mean, we do have to acknowledge that Jim Ryan explicitly said that they're working on an answer to Game Pass. Now, when do I think we'll see it? I feel like we're going to have to at least get an idea of what this answer to Game Pass will be in 2022. I only say that because I don't understand why Jim Ryan would even say something like that in an interview, knowing it's many years away from being talked about, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be released next year, but the idea that Sony won't even talk about it or give us an idea of what it could be, I think we're going to get an idea sometime next year. What do I think that's realistically going to look like? So I thought that this was the meat of the question. And I'm going to tell you guys right now what I think it's like realistically, what I think it will look like. Let's be honest right now, guys. If you go listen to that interview with Jim Ryan, he made it very clear There's no way around it. He made it very clear that Sony is looking to expand the PlayStation brand so that way they can reach hundreds of millions of people. They want hundreds of millions of people to be able to play their games. And there's only, I don't want to say there's only one way to do that, but what I mean is when I say that there's only one way that can happen, there really is only one way that can happen. And I'm going to be totally honest when I say that I think Sony has every intention. I don't want to word it that way. I feel like when I word it that way, it makes it sound like I wholeheartedly believe this, and this is 100% what I'm anticipating. That's not the case. I'm just saying that realistically speaking, what I could see happening is if you look at the approach that Sony has taken with PC, I think Sony is either going to take PlayStation Now or they're going to create another service, or maybe they'll even expand the PlayStation Plus collection, something along those lines. But the point is there's going to be a service, could be PS Now or something else, where they're going to essentially take the same approach with that service that they're taking with PC. Something we did not talk about that we need to talk about that I think plays a vital role in everything we're discussing right now is Sony just dropped The Last of Us Part 2 into PlayStation Now. And I realized, whoa, hold on. Why are we not talking about this? And you realize that no one cares. By that I mean, people are playing it and people are excited. When I say no one cares, what I mean is people are beginning to be okay with this. You know what I mean? I feel like the PlayStation community, is made fun of a lot by a lot of people across the internet. And it's because, there's a lot of people who are going overboard, with their reaction to some of this stuff. But I noticed that I didn't really see anybody saying anything about The Last of Us Part 2. It's been out for just a little over a year. This has to be some kind of record for Sony where they're taking one of their best-selling PlayStation exclusives, one of their biggest, and within about 1 year's time, hey, now it's on PlayStation Now. And I remember that we had so many conversations about, hey, maybe that's Sony's plan. Maybe they're going to release an exclusive for the console, and then after about a year, they'll put it out there for everybody to have on their service, on PC, whatever it may be. And I think that we need to pay attention to this when we talk about this. When we talk about, what is Sony's answer to Game Pass? I think we have to pay attention to what we're seeing right now. I think we're already seeing the slow but sure development of whatever this answer to Game Pass is going to be. And I think it comes in the form of Sony not wanting, I do think there is truth to what Sean Layden said. I think he's correct. He said he doesn't believe Sony is ever going to do day and date. He did say never, but he was saying, no, I don't think they're going to. And I think that's true as well. I don't think Sony needs to do that, is what I'm trying to say. I think the only time Sony would ever consider doing day and date is if they really just do not care about console sales anymore. If selling 100 million consoles is no longer a priority for them, then I think they'll do it. But right now, the PS5 is absolutely a priority for Sony. And when we get the PlayStation 6, you have to assume that that's also going to be a priority, right? You're saying MBG, it's because nobody cares about PlayStation Now. Yeah, let's be honest. Sony is not advertising PlayStation Now, and they're not pushing it the same way that Microsoft is pushing Game Pass. But I'm going on and on here, but let me answer the question that was asked from this community submission. What do I think Sony's answer to Game Pass that Jim Ryan alluded to, what do I think that will look like? Here's what I think it's going to look like. Now, I'm not saying we're going to get this next year. I'm not saying we're even going to get it throughout the course of this generation. We could. It could happen at any time. But what I truly believe Sony is working their way towards is a service that and it's probably going to be PlayStation Now. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be PlayStation Now, but I think what they're going to do is after 1 year of a game being out exclusively on the console, it's going to make its way to this service. That's what I think. Now, I'm being pretty hardline about saying 1 year, when in reality, what we're seeing from Sony is nothing is set in stone. You know how Sony or Microsoft made it clear that every one of our first party games, day and date, onto Game Pass, and that's just the way it is? That's just how it's going to be. You know what I mean? So I think that when you look at hold on, guys. My phone. I apologize. My phone's blowing up right now. I have to. Got to answer this real quick. I apologize. Okay. So because it's day and date on Microsoft, right? It's day and date. That's the hardline stance. Sony is seemingly doing the opposite of that, where they're just being open to pretty much, let's just experiment. Hey, let's put Horizon Zero Dawn on the PC like 3 years after it launched. You know what? Let's put Days Gone. That was only out for like, what, a year by the time or 2 years, I think, by the time they put it on PC. And now it's like, you know what? Let's throw The Last of Us 2 onto, let's throw that onto PlayStation Now and see what happens. And so ultimately, what I'm trying to get at here is I think that in the long run, I could see Sony's answer essentially being, we will have games exclusively for our console for a limited period of time. I could even see a situation where there will just be some games that will always stay exclusive. But I think because Jim Ryan, he wants to grow the PlayStation brand and make it so that millions of people are playing their games, hundreds of millions, that is, the only way he's going to be able to do that is if he finds other avenues to get people to play those games, because you're not going to be able to, the only way with a video game console you could realistically get hundreds of people to play your game, hundreds of millions, I mean, is if you sell 500 million consoles, and that's not going to happen. I mean, if you sell 100 million consoles, the best exclusive could probably bring in, as he said, like 10 to 20 million players. And that's great. Like, that's not anything to scoff at. Like, that's a big deal. But if you're looking to grow that, if you're looking to go beyond bringing in 20 million people, the only way you're going to do that is by finding a way to drop your game in front of not 100 million people, but 500 million people, a billion people. And I know that this is like, oh, well, this is what Microsoft's doing, and we don't know how that's going to work out. What's the price to be paid for doing such a thing? Well, these are all questions that we don't necessarily have answers to, and I don't think Sony does either, nor does Microsoft. We just kind of have to go with it and see what happens. So, Darkborn, you're saying, I think 1 to 2 years after launch to go onto PlayStation Now is reasonable, but not all games. Nixxes and a few other support studios are not able to port it all. Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest concern, and the thing that really is at odds with Sony's priority on the console, if you think about it, because that's true. I don't think they're going to be able to handle everything. That's just unrealistic in terms of porting every single game in a reasonable time frame. What we don't want to see, and I don't know if this makes me sound like a fanboy. Like, this isn't because I'm like, oh, like, I don't want to see this game be removed from my plastic box and somebody else gets to play it. It's not about that. My concern about, let's just say Wolverine. Okay, we'll just use Wolverine. That game's in early development. It would be disappointing to me to find out that that game is being developed simultaneously with PC in mind, because Sony in the long run has an intent to release that game on PC, mainly because it's at odds with the promise of what the PS5 was supposed to offer, right? The PS5 is supposed to be a unique piece of hardware. It is a unique piece of hardware, a customized piece of hardware that when a development studio, especially one as talented as Insomniac Games, is making a game just for that console, and they don't have to worry about PC, they don't have to worry about any other piece of hardware except the PS5 and what is inside that PS5. Well, then, if that's what we find out, then inherently they're not going to be able to tap into the true full potential of what the PS5 offers. That is, unless maybe they're anticipating that, obviously by 2024, 5, and 6, PCs will be out that will be far beyond what the PS5 is currently, right? So maybe it could work in that sense. But I just think that Sony, if anything, and this is just from a fan point of view, from a consumer point of view, right? Is I just kind of wish Sony and Jim Ryan and Herman Holst, I wish they would just be more clear cut about their plans. You know what I mean? Because I just kind of feel like right now it's like, if you were to ask me, and that's why it's so hard to answer this question, because that's exactly what this individual is asking me. Like, what do I think it will realistically look like? Realistically, I have no idea. I have no idea, because the truth is Sony's kind of all over the place right now, and they're really difficult to predict. And anytime I try to predict what Sony does next, I end up looking foolish because I get it wrong. And I feel like people won't blame me for getting it wrong, because who can honestly predict Sony right now? And if I had to answer why I think that is, why does it seem like Sony is so all over the place and they're so difficult to keep track of and predict? I think it's because this is all happening like in real time. I don't think there's some kind of long-term elaborate plan that's in place where it's like, this is what we plan to do with when it comes to expanding PlayStation games into different ecosystems. This is what we plan to do over the next 10 years. I don't think that's a thing. I could be wrong, but if it is, man, they're doing a good job in hiding that. I think they're just taking it, in stride. Like, they're just kind of winging it. I hate to put it that way, but yeah, I just think, it's one of these things where it's difficult to predict. Dude, you're saying MBG will continually defend Sony's terrible decisions no matter what? He's a fanboy who will never truly recognize any fault with the almighty Sony. That's just not true, man. Like, that's just completely false. Nothing I'm saying right now even remotely comes off as defense of PlayStation or Sony. And no, Sony is not almighty. They're a corporation that makes video games that speak to me and that I like. Chill out, man. It's not all that. But Darkborn, again, you're saying, I will say it is smart to resell games on PC and PS Now a couple of years after release, but I don't think all will make the cut. It'll be a few games. So, well, Darkborn, I think you could be onto something. I mean, like I said, I think that right now Sony is in the process themselves trying to decide what makes the cut, what games are worth doing it with. And I think that right now Sony is in an experimental phase. I titled the podcast Sony's in growth mode. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I think right now Sony they're in a experimental phase where they're just going to continue to test the waters, and they're going to do things that let's just say it for what it is, man, that it's going to tick off some of the core PlayStation community. But I think that the PlayStation community, I know that a lot of people who are very diehard PlayStation fans aren't going to want to hear me say this, but I think it's just the truth that needs to be spoken. And that's because people may not know it, but you're not going to have a choice. I remember when Xbox and Microsoft made some pretty big changes. I will say the difference between Microsoft and Sony is Microsoft just ripped the Band-Aid off at one time, man. They did not do it slow. They were just like, they dove into the deep end head first. They just right in. They didn't even take a second to feel the water out. They just went head first. And a lot of the Xbox community, there was a big divide there. There was a lot of discourse within the community where there were people saying like, no, Microsoft has to do exclusives, or no, they can't do this or they can't do that. And by the end, it took a couple of years. But if you look at where they are now, no one's saying that stuff anymore. that conversation is dead and gone. And it's because Microsoft knew that there was going to be some uproar, and the fan base knew that there was going to be discourse. But by the end, Microsoft said, this is what we're doing, and you have no choice but to accept it. And they explained this is why it can be good. And then eventually a large portion of the Xbox community was like, okay, yeah, I think this could be good. This could work. And if you go listen to the Xbox community now, you'll be hard pressed to find somebody within the Xbox community that will come out and say, oh yeah, I don't think Game Pass is a good idea, or I don't like Game Pass, or I don't think the Xbox console not having any exclusives, I don't think that's a good idea. You'll be hard pressed to find any Xbox fan or anybody who is a fan of the Xbox brand right now saying those things. And it's because nobody's saying it. And it's because at some point, again, like, people just kind of walked away from that conversation because this is just what they're doing. And the reality is Sony is doing the same thing. They're just doing it differently. They're doing it slowly. They're doing it more methodically. And it can feel a little bit more unpredictable because of that. And don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Sony is going to copy Microsoft's approach. I'm not saying that. I'm just simply saying that just as Microsoft decided to experiment with a completely new business model, Sony's not experimenting with a completely new business model, but they are experimenting with other things. They are experimenting with putting their games in other places that they normally wouldn't do. And they're going to continue to do that. And I really think that after sitting on it for a week and listening to Jim Ryan's comments, I really think that we, as the PlayStation community, need to understand that things are different now with Sony. And I know that there are people who don't want to hear that, but you need to just kind of, I'm not telling you need to accept it. Don't get me wrong. I'll always be an advocate for speak with your wallet. If you are against something, then just don't financially support it, because that's not, that's the opposite. That's not how that works. You know what I mean? These corporations, they speak the language of money. But you're going to see, and I'm telling you this now, and you can timestamp this and come back to this moment. What you're going to see over the next couple of years is Sony make more and more decisions where there is a vocal core group or audience of PlayStation fans that are completely against it and don't want it. But over time, it's going to become clear that that group, they're not going to last, because people are just going to decide that, you know what, me yelling at Sony and saying this is how it should be, it's not, Sony's not going to listen. They're going to do what they think is best in the long run. And I'm just going to be as clear about it as I can. Sony is not going to listen to the fanboys of the fan base, just like Xbox didn't. And that's just the way it is. And I'm only saying this because I'm sure that there are some of you listening to this that are like imagining there's just some things that if Sony does, I couldn't fathom them ever doing that. You need to brace yourself to just be ready for Sony to do some crazy stuff that for the past 4 generations of PlayStation, you would have never thought in a million years they would do it. And then suddenly they're doing it. That's where we are now with Jim Ryan. And I think it's just a healthier mindset as a gamer in general to just say, okay, well, let's see what happens. I've spent plenty of time being radical, being, hey, like, I'm scared and I'm nervous and I'm fearful, just to realize that of what? You know what I mean? That's all. Like, what am I so afraid of? There's like that I'm going to wake up next week or next year and the console's going to be, it's non-existent. Sony's not making video game consoles anymore. My life is over. I'm going to be honest, guys, I have bigger problems at this point in my life to worry. Like, I don't have energy to spend anymore worrying about this nonsensical stuff that I realize it doesn't matter. I wanted Days Gone to succeed. I wanted a sequel to Days Gone. And we are just at a point where that's not happening. And it doesn't matter how much I want Days Gone. It doesn't matter how passionate I am about it, it's not happening. They're working on a brand new game. So rather than be upset about it, I'm just going to say, okay, well, let's see what this new game is going to be. Hopefully it's good, and try to have a, glass half full mentality. Wow, I really went 2 community submissions in, and it's almost an hour. I'm going to have to, I think, cut it off there and come back to them because I got to start moving on to my topics. Okay, we have a couple of super chats to go over here. So, Chris B, you're saying, didn't God of War 2018 go into PlayStation Now in 2019 for a few months? That's a good question. I actually don't remember that. I don't remember. I know that God of War 2018 did go into PlayStation Now, but I can't recall if it was in 2019. I thought it was in 2020. You could be right, though. Maybe this is not the first time we've seen this, and I'm mistaken. And maybe that's why people aren't talking about it. So, Darkborn, again, thank you so much for the super chats, buddy. You're saying, last thought, what if Jim Ryan was just frustrated by the slow build-up and just voiced it? Him saying he's frustrated doesn't mean he will do anything. Well, that's certainly a possibility, but I find that hard to believe, Darkborn, mainly because it's like Jim Ryan is well aware of like who's going to be watching this interview, and he doesn't frequently do interviews, and it was kind of a fluff piece a little bit, honestly. Like there weren't any really hard-hitting questions that people really wanted to know about, or that Jim Ryan was asked, which is understandable because, again, he doesn't really speak that often. But I don't think that anything PlayStation is planning on doing is going to come at the expense of growth in the console sector. I've said it before and I'll say it again, because you have to understand that right now, the PS5 console is the biggest thing that PlayStation has going for them. I mean, when you think of PlayStation, the brand, you think of the console. It's very similar to Nintendo in that way. And you think of the games as well, but they're all intertwined. The PlayStation brand, the PlayStation games, and the PlayStation console. The console is always going to be a priority for Sony. I do believe that. But I said this before, I'll say it again. The second Sony makes a decision, whatever that decision could be, that decision could literally be anything. But the second Jim Ryan makes a decision for the PlayStation brand that has a negative effect, and I mean a tangible bottom line negative effect on their PlayStation console business, they will reverse whatever that decision was. Now, if you were to say to me, well, if they decide, let's just do a hypothetical, if they ever were to decide to do day and date, would that negatively affect their console sales? I'm going to be real with you guys right now. I don't know the answer to that question. I can't predict the future. I think it's reasonable to think logically how it could negatively affect their console sales. But what if Sony did decide to do day and date a couple of years from now, and it had zero effect on their console sales, and they're selling just as many consoles as they would have otherwise? Wouldn't that be kind of mind-blowing? But what I'm trying to say is that if they were to make a decision like that and it had a pretty profoundly negative effect on their console sales, I think they would reverse that decision, at least temporarily, because they'd be like, uh-oh, the console is our bread and butter. It has been for every PlayStation generation. We cannot jeopardize that. And so they might think at that point, maybe we have to rethink this. How to speedrun. Thank you so much, buddy. You're saying, sometimes I think people judge Sony too hard since they won the last generation. Even if they made a tiny mistake, people will blame them. But Xbox is quite the opposite since they used to be worse. Yeah, I agree. That's just natural, right? I mean, Xbox is the underdog, and therefore, even a small victory is going to be seen as a big one because they're the underdog. A lot of people were counting them out, and it's the pendulum. It swings back and forth. You know how it is. What comes around goes around, and Xbox has been. I remember a long time ago, I heard somebody say that right now Phil Spencer is turning the ship around, charting a new course. But the thing about turning a ship of that size, it takes a very long time. It doesn't just turn on a dime. And so we saw many years of people being very down on Xbox, myself included. And you flash forward a couple years, now this ship is on course and it's been going and people are liking it. And so, yeah, that, it is it's natural that PlayStation has been on top for a long time. Sony has been on top for a long time. You know, when you are on the top of the hill, all that's left to do is get knocked off, right? So you know, Sony right now is fighting to stay on top, and they have to be very careful because when you're on top like that, you can get attacked from every angle, and you have to cover all your bases, and it's super easy to get knocked off. So I do think that that's the position Sony's currently in, and I think that Jim Ryan is navigating that right now. I think that's why Jim Ryan has had to come out more than a few times, even within just the last year, and basically say, our bad, like, sorry, we messed up. And so it's just the, you know, it's the natural order of things, if you will. Romeo, you're saying, MBG, have you heard of gaming? Sorry, let me read this again. MBG, have you heard gaming of awards going to be sweet? I'm assuming you're talking about the Game Awards that are happening in December. I have. I'm not gonna lie. I'm feeling pretty good about the Game Awards this year, and I hate to talk about it this way because it's not the reason why we should be going into the Game Awards. We should obviously be going into the Game Awards to celebrate the great games and recognizing the developers and the hard work and, you know, giving them praise and everything they deserve. But, you know, my excitement, just like most other people's, like, I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm tuning into the Game Awards because I want to see those new game announcements, man. And I saw Jeff Keighley, and Jeff Keighley, he does a good job. He builds the hype. He gets people excited, but I think we can all agree he maybe overhypes things just a little bit. I do it myself all the time, and he has a much bigger audience than I do, so I understand it's very difficult to balance that. He needs to get people excited for his shows, but he said he put out a tweet, I think it was a couple of days ago, where he was basically saying, like, the things I've seen, like, you wouldn't believe the things I've seen. And you have to imagine he's talking about some of the announcements and games that are going to be revealed at the Game Awards. And so there was that insider, and she seems to be relatively reliable, Millie A. She seemed to recently on her Twitter be teasing something about PlayStation at the Game Awards. She didn't give us any information, which I don't like when insiders do that stuff, you know, like, this is why I just don't care to follow insiders anymore, where it's like, you're either going to give us the info or you're just going to tease us. And I'm not a fan of being teased like that. I would just prefer to get the info or just maybe be quiet about it. But I don't know. At the very least, I guess she's just trying to hint to us that Sony does plan to show up at the Game Awards in a somewhat significant way. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I mean, it would make sense for Sony to maybe have one more big announcement to end the year with, giving them a bit of momentum going into 2022, but definitely excited for the Game Awards, man. PlayStation Pete, you're saying Sony has the best games. Enjoying Kenna. Well, thank you for that, PlayStation Pete. Yeah, I feel like I don't do that enough anymore. I don't talk enough about the games I'm actually playing and the games I'm actually enjoying. And I think I'm going to try to start doing that more often on my channel. I haven't played Kenna yet. I am waiting to get a physical copy of the game, but it works out because there are other games. I'm just so immersed into Ghost of Tsushima. If you buy Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, there are a total of 77 trophies. 77 trophies. And I decided when I, bought the game and installed it in my PS5, I said to myself, I'm going to get all 77 trophies. I don't care how difficult it may be. I'm just going to do it because I want to do it. This is a game that it makes me just feel like I want to get everything I can in this game. And so right now, I think I'm about 8 trophies away, maybe less than that, from being completely finished with it. And then once I'm finished with that, I'm going to move on to, I'm not sure what I'm going to move on to yet. Maybe Kenna. I think the physical copy of Kenna doesn't come out till, I think, next month. So maybe I'll move on to Deathloop, give my thoughts on that. I want to talk about, not right now, but I'm going to make some dedicated videos talking about Ghost of Tsushima because, man, I cannot believe, like, I don't know that it's possible to play a video game the wrong way, but when I think back to how I played Ghost of Tsushima last year when it came out versus how I played it now, it's like, whoa. You're asking if my face is sunburned? No, I don't know why. Like, I guess it's like really warm in here, so my neck and my cheeks are a little red. I don't know why that is. That happens to me sometimes, but I'm not sunburnt, so I'm just a little flush, I guess. I don't know why. But Judah Zuck, you're saying, I'm an Xbox fan, but I still say Xbox should have exclusives. I don't like Game Pass since it devalues games and allows developers to release unfinished crap. It's definitely a loaded statement, Judah Zuck, and you're certainly not the only one. You're not the only one that feels that way. But again, like my whole thing with Game Pass, I'm not going to get deep into it, but I've been very fearful of the long-term implications on the quality of games, how game developers could alter their approach to game development, all this stuff. And I feel like I'm still somewhat fearful, but we're getting to that point where we're going to have an answer soon. All right. I said this before and I'll say it again. 2022 is going to be the big year for Xbox, in my opinion, to prove that Game Pass, you can get games that are not Halo, Gears, and Forza. I have to emphasize that are not Halo, Gears, and Forza that can be very high quality, that it's not Game Pass filler as it's been branded right in the past. And I think that it's going to be up to them next year with a game like Redfall, and especially with a game like Starfield, to prove like, here's a AAA polished video game that's coming from our studios, that's not Halo, Gears, or Forza, dropping in the Game Pass day one. And if they can do that, then I'll be honest, I think Microsoft would have effectively proven that Game Pass can be viable. But it's going to take a couple of years of that consistently, and then people are really going to feel it. The next Super Chat Darkborn, you're saying, it would simply be smarter to release the 8 or so multiplayer games they have cooking on PS5 only and keep them on there for their micros and or subs. So, you talk about all the multiplayer games that Sony currently has in development through their first party or through their through their partners. I believe that Sony is going to expand their multiplayer games onto as many platforms as they can. I do believe that. I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if they didn't, but I suspect that this Last of Us game that apparently is years away. I thought we were going to get it much sooner, but it's going to be a full-blown Naughty Dog multiplayer Last of Us game. And it's going to be a game as a service. It may even be free to play. Oh yeah, especially if it's free to play. I see that coming out on PC, PS4, and anywhere else it can be played, PS Now, whatever. I see that happening. I really do. So, Planet Schlorpian, you're saying at least Sony never had a Connect cringe E3 event. Yeah, that is true. That is true, Planet Schlorpian. Space Gambler Jr., you're saying, have you seen the new YouTube thanks button? I've seen that. I don't think that's available on my channel. I don't know if it's just going to automatically pop up one day, but I have seen that. It's apparently this new thing that YouTube is doing. It's another way for creators to potentially generate revenue, where there's going to be a thanks button next to the share button or something like that, where you can leave a comment. It's essentially like a super chat, but for a video, where your comment is highlighted and you just donate a certain amount to the creator, essentially thanking them for the content. So I think that's actually a really cool thing. I mean, hey, as a content creator, obviously I think that's great. So I don't know much else about it outside of that. And then we have Josh. You're saying, I laughed at the free games, but why is PGA Tour fire? Yeah, dude, I've heard good things about PGA Tour, man. I don't think it's a game that I would play personally, but people laughed at it, and I'm hearing other people come on and be like, dude, PGA is amazing. So there you go. Okay, so before I dive into the first main topic of the show, I'm gonna I'll come back to the community submissions a little bit later. But before I dive into the main topic of the show, there's something I do have to discuss here because I see many of you bringing it up in the chat, and I think it's only fair and it's the right thing to do for me to acknowledge it. I actually just wasn't really thinking about it, but a lot of you guys are telling me to go to the Blue Box Twitter account because they put out a new message, and this is, again, I feel like it's only right for me to acknowledge this and tell you guys my thoughts on it because of the nature of, how much we covered it. So Blue Box Game Studios, I'm going to read their message in full. They posted this at 1:25 a.m. on October 17th. They said the following message is not addressed as a company, but as a group of human beings. The last few days have been difficult. Death threats are increasing online, but unfortunately also physically, and this has to stop. We've been dealing with death threats the past few months and the last few days, and we've been dealing with it again, especially physically. This not only affects us as a team, but everyone within our environments, other businesses, families, and everyone surrounding us. We want to work in a safe environment, and with job openings upcoming in the future, we want to offer a safe work environment for future colleagues as well. We won't tolerate this, and we will take action by providing authorities IP addresses, logs, and camera footage. We are fully aware of the negative situation that we have created, and we truly understand your frustration. But what we don't understand are the death threats. We understand and appreciate your interest for Abandoned. We are working hard on Abandoned. We will start a regular blog on our website that you can follow, and we will post any news on Abandoned on our Twitter. But all we ask until then is just give us space and let us work on Abandoned. Please, thank you. So a very loaded, statement that Blue Box is coming out here making, but I'm going to keep this short and sweet just so I can make it clear. I understand that we spent a lot of time on this channel throughout the past couple of months talking about Blue Box Game Studios and Abandoned, and I don't regret that, mainly because it was a really interesting exercise in community, and a lot of you guys had fun, and we were not egregious about it. I will say right here, right now, that as somebody who was involved in this, that anybody who was showing up here, watching the videos, doing the live streams, talking about it, everybody was great. I don't recall ever seeing anybody here being there were some people who were annoyed and were like, please let's stop talking about this. But nobody here was in the comments or in the chat leaving death threats or talking about anything insanely egregious like that. So I just want to make that clear. But I also want to make it clear that at this point in time, because a lot of people keep asking me, do you still believe that there's something going on with Blue Box and the conspiracies? And the answer is no. No. I know that I've acted a little bit funny in the past and, kind of went along with it, but I'm here to say right now that this has clearly reached a point where people's lives, I'm sure their mental state is being very negatively affected. And I know that there are some people who are like, I don't care. They're just playing the victim card, so on and so forth. You are free to think what you want. Okay, I'm not here to tell you how you should feel, but there is one thing I am going to say that I will take a hardline stance on. And I'll just read it because I typed it out. I said, regardless of how anyone feels about this game or the situation surrounding it, this is not the way. Death threats are unacceptable and are not a joke. And that's it. That is how I feel about the matter. I understand that there are, going to be people who think that they're doing this for attention, and I can't guarantee that they're not. I'm not here to defend Blue Box as a studio or defend any particular individual. What I'm here to do is to make it clear that if you happen to be somebody who is sending anybody a death threat, anybody, video game dev or otherwise, you should stop immediately because it's not right And it really isn't a joke. I know that it's easy to be like, oh, well, I'm anonymous and I'm behind a keyboard and, and everything else. But you need to understand that there are people reading what you're saying, and you don't know, like, even if somebody makes a death threat and they're just messed up in the head and they just think it's just funny, it's just jokes, man. Like, you have to understand that people who are reading that on the other side, they might not, like, they're not going to see it that way. Like the amount of hate that's been thrown. And I understand, like, if you come out here and you say, dude, I can't stand Blue Box. They are the worst developers I've ever seen. They're an absolute joke. They're clowns. Their game's probably going to be trash. Dude, that's fair game, man. Like, they did some things to upset a lot of people, but I'm just saying, like, and it's not just about Blue Box, because this happens all the time. Just stop sending people death threats. I don't understand why that's so hard. Like, I don't understand what's difficult about typing up a message explaining why you don't like a thing or you don't like a studio and explaining why you don't like it. Why is that difficult? Why do you need to threaten somebody's life? It makes no sense. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't get your point across. It just creates unnecessary problems for people who, like, don't deserve it. No one deserves to be threatened like that. So you're saying, but who said he got death threats? Hassan. Well, you can only assume that it was Hassan who typed up the message. He doesn't explicitly say, like, this is who, but I'm just saying that, going forward, I'm going to do exactly what Blue Box is asking anybody who's been following their game to do. And that is, he's saying, or Blue Box is saying, they want some space and they just want some time to work on their game. And you know what? No problem. I haven't been talking about Blue Box. I haven't been talking about Abandoned because there's no reason to do so. I was wrong with thinking this was something it wasn't. I know I wasn't the only one, and I certainly know that they are at fault for fanning the flames to a certain extent. But with all of that being said, again, just there's no reason to behave this way and talk this way to anybody, any studio, any person. Just don't do it. It's not hard. You're saying MBG, they themselves are not innocent in this situation. Oh, don't get me wrong. It's not a matter of innocence. Like, I just want to make that clear. It's not a matter of innocence. We know that Blue Box Game Studios is guilty. To an extent, I'm guilty as well, right? But we all have to collectively be able to at least come together, and we need to acknowledge that, whoa, this is wrong. Johnny Utah, you're saying, MBG, you're partly to blame for this. You stirred the pot up. You stirred the pot. Now own up to it and be a man. No, I am, Johnny Utah. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I didn't have multiple streams going full-blown tinfoil hat mode, but I wasn't alone. And I'm not justifying anything. I'm just simply trying to say that it was a moment. It was interesting. It was what it was. And hindsight's 2020. And I realize now that, okay, this didn't go at all the way I thought it was going to go. And with their latest message, it's clear that whoever is involved in this, they're just basically saying, like, please leave us alone. Like, we just want to live normally. And, nobody should have to feel like they're under fire like that. So, all I'm going to say before I move on to my main topic of the podcast is, we're no longer going to talk about Blue Box Game Studios or Abandoned until they release a trailer or something. They say they're working on the game. When they release something about the game, we'll talk about it if it seems interesting. But outside of that, the whole conspiracy thing, the whole Kojima, Silent Hill, Metal Gear, it's done. And my cats are now fighting. We've reached that point of the podcast. Great way to segue out of this. So you'll probably hear my cats attacking one another. So if you hear some strange noises in the background, you'll know that you'll know. You're saying, dude, you're not responsible for people going to that level. I know. I'm not saying I'm responsible for it. I just want to make that clear. I know that, but I hear you guys. I know you guys are saying it's not my fault. I know it's not my fault. I'm just saying I'm trying to do the right thing, which is, hey, I was part of the conversation to an extent, and I don't want to pretend that I wasn't. And so I just feel as though it is at the very least my responsibility to convey this message coming from Blue Box Game Studios and encourage anybody who is maybe thinking about doing a death threat at some point in the near future, rethink that. There's no reason to be doing anything like that, okay? Be upset, be mad, be frustrated, but you don't have, that's not the way, all right? So we'll move on from that, and the first topic, the main topic I want to talk about is involving a Sony investor. So according to one Sony investor, PlayStation is currently in growth mode right now. This investor did an extensive write-up, and so I thought that we could go over it and discuss it. Many of my followers or audience were actually suggesting this to me, and they were saying I should read it and check it out. So I'll do that. Let me see. Josh, you're saying, imagine Sony funds Slow Clap, to make a AAA Daredevil game with the fluid combat we see in Sifu, Sheesh, or even Naughty Dog bussing up a Daredevil game. Yeah, there's been a lot of requests for a Daredevil game. I don't know that we're ever going to get one, but I think it's safe to say that right now, when it comes to Sony's side of things, Insomniac is and I know some people don't want to hear this because they want more original games, but Insomniac is they are the Marvel studio right now. I hope they're doing more than just Marvel, but question mark, you're saying, what's up, man? Good morning. Did you check out DC Fandom 21 yesterday? Is it it's called Fandom, right? I watched some of it, but oh man, it was really difficult for me to watch all of it because there's just a lot of, like, to be honest, most of the stuff that they were showing, I just had no interest in whatsoever. But there were some things, like, I saw a lot of people were very excited about the Suicide Squad game that they showed another trailer of, but I just can't get excited. I'm not being negative. I'm not saying that, hey, like, this game's going to be bad. It's just look, like, when's the last time I saw gameplay from what's the name of I know the name is eluding me right now, but come on, I know I can think of it. Somebody help me out here. The studio. Come on, it's on the tip of my tongue. Somebody help me out. I'm looking at the chat. I'm waiting. Somebody's gonna help me. Rocksteady. There we go. Okay. I don't know. I hate it when that happens. It's on the tip of your tongue, but I feel like, when's the last time I saw gameplay from Rocksteady? And it's been so long. What was it, 2015? I mean, my God, this is crazy, right? So I just feel like I was excited because I thought we were going to see at least a little bit, like a gameplay trailer, not a full-blown demo, but a gameplay trailer. But I'm not discrediting Rocksteady. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that in a negative way. What I mean is, like, wow, man, like, it's taken a long time. It's taken a long time for them to make this game. And I was ultimately just a little bit disappointed that we ended up getting another trailer, which apparently was in engine. So I guess that's better. But I definitely was hoping that we were going to see some gameplay. I know that we got a new trailer for, what's the other game? Gotham Knights? I think that's the name of the game. That one looks good too. We got a look at Black Adam, which looks really cool. We got a new Batman trailer, which I said, again, I thought looked really cool. So, So yeah, I mean, it was pretty good, you know. Oh, and they showed the trailer for the Flash movie, which again, I cannot wait to see Michael Keaton back as Batman. Like, I can't believe that's a thing that's happening. That's so crazy. All right, so with that being said, let's dive into this topic. All right, I know we're a little bit all over the place. That's just the nature of a live podcast. This comes from Housekeeping Games, inspecting and dissecting Sony's acquisition strategy. In a world where multiple industries are quickly moving forward towards consolidation, Sony, is one of the most curious companies involved between gaming, movies, anime, technology, and even music. They're one of the most diverse companies on the matter. Sadly, acquisitions have become some kind of game, treated as trading cards for a lot of people and fan bases. In both gaming and movie streaming wars, it's essentially used as marketing. We spent money on this to get rights to this is basically a reason for every single acquisition. With the rise of consolidation that has taken over the entertainment history, so has the amount of misinformation and bad takes on acquisitions. As I both own stock within Sony and have a good point of view on their plans, budgets, and stuff like that, I feel very comfortable in talking about the subject, and in the process, hopefully learn a few people about their supposed strategies and plans. So I got to tell you real quick before we go any further, a point that's worth making here is this is not like an insider or anything. This is literally somebody who's just an investor and they're giving their perspective. And I'm not a Sony investor. So, I thought it would just be interesting because when we talk about acquisitions and stuff like that, when we talk about Sony looking to, I see people say it all the time, man. They're like, when's Sony going to make that mega acquisition, that Bethesda level acquisition? And, I think that it's a lot more nuanced than that. So, I just want to make that known. This isn't like somebody who is, speaking from a point of view where they know what's going on within Sony. They do believe that they have a good understanding, though. So it says the last 10 years to fully understand Sony, I find that we need to go back to the very interesting last 7 to 10 years. Sony was in a pretty bad state in the beginning of the year 2010, with shareholders being worried about the state of the consoles and PlayStation, the movie business side of Sony Pictures having quite a lot of misses, and multiple tech departments losing money. The decade has been mostly focused on fixing a lot of their problems, repaying debt, and setting better goals for the future. Looking at what they've done, they've sold their stock in certain companies, focused on making segments more efficient. They've listened to feedback and been smarter about going into content. Somehow, Sony turned around entirely and is now in a very good position, not only for themselves, but also compared to competitors. The biggest part for Sony during the 2010s has perhaps been that they paid off almost all of their loans and have worked on increasing their cash on hand to end up in a much better and secure position. The company we have in front of us today is a very different one than what we saw 10 years ago. A great tool to see how companies' cash on hand has changed throughout the year is macro trends. Using the tool and looking back at earlier years, we can put into context how much they've changed during the last 10 years. In 2010, their cash on hand was around $18 billion. In 2015, when they'd begun making a lot of changes and paying off debt, they were looking at a low point of $13 billion. However, in 2021, they've all of a sudden reached one of the highest points the company ever has, with over $44 billion cash on hand with very low debt. And he puts an edit here. He says Sony has debt, but it's low debt to equity. Their low debt to equity is very good. Their debt situation is also a whole lot better than it previously was. So he just wanted to correct that. And so, again, this is from an investor standpoint. And it continues on here. Sorry, I lost track of it for a second. Continues by saying recent trends and strategies. Aside from that, Sony is also very focused on its goals. While the company was very split during previous years, we now see the reality of one Sony in which all the different segments are collaborating with each other. Speaking of the segments, they very much They very much so fall under segments to this day, and Sony sees them as their 3 key pillars. But we'll put the company as 3.5 key pillars for the sake of this post. So there's Sony Music, Funimation, Sony Pictures, and Sony Interactive Entertainment. So the mergers and acquisition strategy going forward, this is the part that I think many of you are going to be interested in knowing about. So historically, Sony has made a lot of acquisitions. It's often forgotten that most PlayStation studios are one way or another were acquired once upon a time, but most acquisitions are pretty organic. Essentially, Sony needs to do it to grow in a certain area, or even from a need of securing its partners to advance them even further. Very rarely has Sony ever been very aggressive with their acquisitions. Where we currently see the biggest change is actually in how their acquisitions are made. Historically, the different Sony segments have more or less went out to the leaders / the board of Sony and said, we want to acquire X because of these reasons. If the board accepts this, they essentially give them a set sum of money to use. And so it goes on to say, but this has changed very recently. Again, using the excellent Macro Trends website, we can see that Sony deposited around $24 billion this summer. Some people seem to believe that this is because a large acquisition is in motion. This isn't true. This is essentially Sony taking from their cash on hand to essentially create their first mergers and acquisitions focused budget. In other words, instead of them going on a case-by-case basis for acquisitions, each segment now has a dedicated budget for mergers and acquisitions. This is kind of alluded to by Sony Pictures president Tony Vincicura, and we talked about that. For those wondering what's being said here, basically the head of Sony's Pictures department, he was asked like what the next area of consolidation is, and he said that, hey, for those asking, it's not 24 billion yen, it's $24 billion. And so what Sony's Pictures, the head of Sony's Pictures, what he said was that the next area of consolidation is going to be in gaming, and he pretty much said that who's better positioned for that than Sony. So he seems to be heavily hinting that this 24, at least a good chunk of this $24 billion is going to be focused on PlayStation growth, which is certainly exciting. So he says, essentially what he said is that there will be some strategic investment by Sony Pictures Entertainment. I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit because he's talking about the other divisions. So what would the budget split be? Well, if I would make a guess on how the budget could be split between the segments, my guess would be that SIE has around 13 billion in the budget, while the rest is pretty evenly split between Sony Music and Sony Pictures, with a bigger cut going to Sony Music. So it says, as we've seen by SIE's recent acquisitions, they very much fall in line with SPE's and Sony Music's in that they're securing important assets. They're acquiring their partners to secure some of the most important assets they've used throughout the years. As I previously stated, this is surely set to change for 2022 and forward. So I'm going to skip a little bit ahead here. I want to get to the conclusion so we can talk about what's being said here. Conclusion, the final part we haven't really touched on yet is the fact that an acquisition isn't like trading cards, as a lot of people seem to believe. While Sony, in theory, could acquire a very big company and afford it, we also need to remember the fact that they would have to take on every employee at the company and take on a lot of additional costs aside from just the acquisitions. This is why I suspect that while Sony will be more aggressive, they'll still be very strategically picked, as basically everything about the company they acquire needs to fit within their plans and overall strategy. While I frequently see Sony should acquire Square Enix posts flying around, people seem to forget that there'd be a massive amount of layoffs and potentially even closures of studios that you love because of it. A purchase like that would literally be a content securing one for Sony. So again, a lot of people are asking me to look into this and read this and give my take on it, because I do think it's honestly pretty interesting, right? Apologies, my throat's getting a little dry here. Okay, what article is this? It comes from It comes, I think it's Marzipan Games or something like that. It's pretty obscure from what I can gather, but you know, the idea that Sony is in growth mode. So this was something I wasn't really aware of, how apparently Sony has set aside $24 billion to spread across all of their different divisions for the sake of investing and mergers and acquisitions. And what I gather from this, from what I can tell, I think Sony is going to go. When I say big, I know that people are going to assume that like they're going to acquire Square Enix or something. I think Sony's going all in with acquisitions going forward. Like, I think that PlayStation, like, we have to understand, I know that this $24 billion budget for mergers and acquisitions, I understand that it's been divvied up between the different segments, but PlayStation is the most profitable division underneath Sony. So it makes a lot of sense that a good chunk of that is for PlayStation. And I think that what we're seeing with the studios that Sony has acquired so far, Housemarque, Nixxes, Firesprite, Bluepoint, I think it's just the beginning. I think that we've heard Xbox fans talking a lot recently about, not recently, but pretty much since 2018, where it's like acquisitions. Microsoft's buying more content, they're buying more studios, and they're going to keep doing it. And they were right. Microsoft is still doing it. But I think this is where we're starting to see Sony. Like, Sony kind of woke up and they're like, all right, the industry's consolidating. Like, we gotta start getting a little bit more aggressive. But I do think that it is strategic aggression, not just raw aggression. And I think we are kind of clearly seeing that, right? You can clearly see that acquisitions such as Housemarque and Bluepoint, that's not just raw aggression where it's like, we buy you, we own you, you're part of us now, you make games. No, like, it was always going to happen that way. I just think that things had to be sped up a little bit, because it's like, since the industry is consolidating and everybody's free game, everybody wants to be bought, right? If you're an independent studio, you want to be bought by Microsoft or Sony or somebody else. Sony has to go out there and they got to start being like, okay, look, Housemarque, Bluepoint, we thought maybe one day we could acquire you and you could be part of our PlayStation family. We didn't think it would be this soon, but here we are. This is what we got to do. And so I think that it's going to... Here's a question I have. Is Sony taking... I know that $24 billion budget is for mergers and acquisitions, but could Sony be in the process of creating a new first-party studio? Question mark, you're saying it would be something if they merge Kratos and Solid State Snake together to become Kratos Snake. Question mark, I think you're a little bit confused. We're talking about studio acquisitions and mergers, not characters. I'm sure you know that. I don't know if that was meant to be a joke or not, but yeah, I mean, Solid Kratos, that just sounds weird. I don't know, man. Thank you for the super chat either way. But yeah, I don't really have too much to add to this. I wanted to highlight this because essentially this Sony investor who, they believe they have a pretty good take on what Sony plans to do. And I mean, they have to know to an extent what they're talking about because they're investing into Sony. Could that $24 billion be for IP as well? Well, yeah. I mean, as this article points out, anytime Sony makes an acquisition, it's essentially a power move to say, hey, like, we want this IP. We want this talent. And IP is a big part of that. $13 to $18 billion MBG, that's more than Microsoft and Bethesda. Well, let's get one thing straight here. If you're talking about going up against, like, Sony going up against Microsoft in a battle of attrition, basically, like who can spend more. I mean, come on, dude. Like, Microsoft wins that every day, all day. Microsoft can buy anything. But this is where the strategic aggression from Sony is key, because I've explained this in a podcast, I think it was like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where I basically explained that there are some things that Sony has that the PlayStation brand has acquired through sheer force of just hard work and dedication and talent that cannot be bought, that it holds weight. It holds weight. People wonder why, like, how is Sony able to acquire Insomniac Games for only $229 million? And you're right, DDP. You're right. Not everything is for sale. But people often bring that up and are like, how did Sony manage to do that? It's because of the partnership and the relationship between Insomniac Games. You know, I firmly believe that. I can't prove that, but why else would Insomniac sell so low? Why else would they sell so low? You're saying 290 million is a steal. I think it was less than that. I think it was 229 million. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was 229. And that's why. It's because of their relationship with one another, their partnership over the years. And you say that not everybody wants to be sold. That's true. Not everybody wants to be sold. Not everybody wants to be acquired. But one thing that I think is important to a lot of independent creators, especially talented ones, people who know that they have the goods, they are going to be thoughtful about who they're going to go with, right? Unless they're planning on retiring and just going out, maybe they won't care. But no, I don't believe that for a second. You're talking about people who spend their entire lives building their life's work. They're not just going to throw it all away. They're going to put thought, a lot of emotional thought and weight behind a decision. I believe that Insomniac was made multiple offers. How could they not be? Who wouldn't want to own Insomniac? And I think that Insomniac rejected them all. But at some point, Sony's like, look, like, you guys will be perfect with us. Like, we can help. Like, we can make your studio something even greater than it is. And look at where they're at. Look at, dude, I mean, look at the work that Insomniac Games is doing for Sony. It's insane that they didn't get at least $1 billion. At least $1 billion. This is why, I'm just being honest, like, this is why when I see people, they always bring up the Bethesda acquisition and how, like, yeah, you know, 7.5 billion, look at everything they got. It's like, yeah, Microsoft got a lot. They definitely got a lot. And you can't really compare the acquisition of Insomniac Games to Bethesda, but I'm going to do it anyway. There's something to be said for Insomniac, man. Like, I know that people are going to be like, that's just crazy. Like, who would take Insomniac over Bethesda? But it's like, I'm not going to go down that road because there's no point in doing so. All I'm going to say is, as a PlayStation fan, knowing that Sony acquired Insomniac, I'm feeling pretty good about that acquisition. Okay. Looking at how talented Bluepoint is, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I don't need Sony, and I don't think I want Sony to go out there and be like, hey, everybody, we can do it too. We acquired Square Enix. Like, is that even necessary? Like, look at how close Sony and Square Enix already are. Like, is that even necessary? I don't think so. And I don't think Square Enix has any intent to sell themselves to anybody. You know, I heard some people bring up not that long ago in terms of Microsoft and acquisitions. They said, at what point does Microsoft start to annoy people, right? At what point does Microsoft start, like, they buy another big company and now they're owned by Microsoft? At what point do people start turning around and being like, Microsoft, what are you doing? Like Bethesda, okay, like Bethesda's like the upper limit where people are like, yeah, this works. But what happens if they buy Ubisoft or something, right? Or somebody else that nobody was expecting? At what point do people turn around and be like, what? Like, why are you doing like that? That's not cool, man. That's why I say, like, I know, you know, it is like the acquisition wars and it is like trading cards, but my whole thing with Sony going forward as a PlayStation fan and enthusiast, I think Sony's been doing a great job. I think Sony has been doing a great job at buying studios and acquiring studios that make a lot of sense. Firesprite, to me, is really the only one that it still makes sense, but it was like the most unexpected. Like, oh, I would have never expected to see that, right? You're saying there are laws against that, MBG. I know there are, but I don't know, man. Sometimes I still wonder. Question mark. You're saying, let me ask, if your shirt is tucked into your pants, does that mean your pants are tucked in? Is tucked into your shirt, I guess is what you're trying to say. Mind blowing, right? P.S. I'm just messing with you. Yeah, I figured you were a question mark, but yeah, no, that is I don't know. If your shirt's tucked in your pants, that mean your pants is tucked into your shirt? I don't know, man. That's one of those mind bending questions that I'm not trying to think that deep right now. But thank you for the super chat nonetheless, buddy. Darkborn, you're saying Sony should build a couple of studios and scoop up smaller talent. Buying publishers is the way to water down talent and good games. Most IP are overdone. Oh, I do agree. That's one thing that I really was very excited about when I remember Microsoft made those string of acquisition announcements were like, we're building the initiative. I'm like, that's awesome. We need to see more of that. We need to see more of just building studios from the ground up. And dude, it would be so interesting to see what a studio could, like, in 2021 or 2022, if Sony announced like, hey, we're building a new AAA studio. I mean, the type of talent that Sony would be able to attract with that notion, I think that would be exciting, man. That would be exciting. So, I mean, the initiative was exciting to a lot of people. I'm a little worried. I don't know if I'm worried about the initiative, but I don't know. My excitement levels for what they're doing, I'm going to be real, it's kind of dropped pretty significantly, but I'll give them a chance. We'll see what they end up producing. But yeah, there you go. I mean, Sony is in growth mode. They are. And I think that you don't necessarily need an investor to come out here and say that to you, like a Sony investor. I mean, all you have to do is look at the fact that Sony made more acquisitions in a single year than they did the past decade. That tells you all you need to know. And I don't believe for a second that's going to stop. I think that Sony sees that they're in a very good position. They have very high ambition. They know that their competition is out there looking to buy everybody up that they can. And so I firmly believe that Sony is going to, growth mode continues into 2022 and beyond. I firmly believe that. And it's exciting. It's exciting because I like, as a PlayStation enthusiast, I like to see, just like Xbox fans like to see Xbox game studios grow, I like to see PlayStation studios grow and expand as well. Not so we can be like, oh, see, we have this and you don't. It's not about that. It's just about, like, for me, PlayStation Studios represents, it's like a quality seal that you just, it's like, oh, this is a PlayStation Studios game. Okay. Again, it's that aspect that can't be purchased. Ep.80, thank you. And this is your this is a portion of the podcast where my cat's gonna try to jump on me. She always, it's very confined here. There's very little space to navigate and move around. I would really prefer if you didn't try to jump on my lap right now. I gotta reposition some stuff at some point because this literally happens every stream. But Siler, member for 17 months. Thank you so much, buddy. I always appreciate your support. Also, member at the Play Has No Limits Plus tier, saying, Mr. MBG, for Halloween, you should stream The Last of Us 2 on permadeath mode. Also, glad to be here for 17 months. Playing some Death Stranding Director's Cut while listening to the podcast is the way to go. Yeah, I agree, man. Really quick, Death Stranding, when you're not doing cutscenes or there aren't any cutscenes and it's just gameplay, absolutely the perfect podcast game for sure. But thank you so much, man. Yeah, I don't know. Now that I think about it, is Halloween on a Sunday? Let me check. Oh, it is. It is. So apparently I'll be doing a podcast on Halloween. I don't dress up for Halloween anymore. I don't know. I don't. I'm going to be honest. I don't think I will when we do the podcast that day. I don't know. Maybe I could try to get some Halloween lights or something. I don't know. We'll do a little something. But yeah, I think some people have been asking me to start streaming games more or playing games more. It's tough, man. Like, I want to dress up as Joel. Yeah. Oh yeah. What did you guys? Well, okay. I got a bunch of different things going on in my head right now. I want to start playing more games on my channel. I was thinking about trying to record myself playing a game, like a let's play, like a recording, not live, like a 20 to 30 minute chunk of just me playing a game, with my commentary over it, and seeing how you guys react to that, seeing if that's something you guys would want. I am thinking about trying that out. I would like to stream a little bit more, but it's tough, you know, because I just feel like I don't know how big the audience is for something like that on my channel. Like, I don't know if it's justified on the channel. I want to do it, and I would like to grow, have a portion of the audience that likes that. But yeah, what did you guys think of there's this Twitter account. I forget the name of the Twitter account. I think it's like Last of Us Info or something like that. Saying don't stream on this channel. Yeah, my friend, you guys may remember him. Some of you, people who've been around for a while, Brown Sugar, he was a featured guest on the channel a few times back. He was suggesting to me, he's like, because he likes to play multiplayer games a lot, and we play online a lot together. We play a lot of multiplayer games together. He was saying I should make a second channel that's focused on basically just me and him playing like multiplayer games. Some people know who he is. People who've been here for a while know who I'm talking about. But making a second channel, just doing stuff like that, and I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, maybe. That sounds like it could be a pretty pretty good thing. Maybe we could try that. Question mark. You're saying Nick Knack Patty Wreck. Give a dog. I can't, dude. The thing about your super chats is I can never tell if you're purposely misspelling them. Nick Knack Patty Wreck. Give a dog a bone. If you give that dog bone, would that dog really go home? Mind blowing. You got to stop messing with me. Question mark. You got to stop messing with me. I can't even read your super chats correctly. I don't know what's going on anymore. Okay. You're saying keep it on this channel? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll have to see. It's clear that like weeks like this it's tough because there's just so little news, so little to talk about. I have to start finding other things to do to try to keep interest in the channel, you know? But with that being said, we are going to move on to the next topic. If you guys could do me a favor, if you've been enjoying the podcast so far, please hit that like button for me. I would really appreciate that. Saying you miss Brown Sugar. How is he? He's doing good. He's doing good. He's been wanting to do some more stuff with me on the channel for a little while now. So we'll probably do something with that. For sure. For sure. You know what? Actually, really quick before I move on to the next topic, we've been playing a ton of Ghost of Tsushima Legends together. Like, we've been playing that almost every night. So I was thinking about maybe doing like a discussion video with him where we just talk about Ghost of Tsushima Legends. Like, I just, the thing is, I don't know how well that's going to do because I just don't know, that anybody's going to care. I mean, I know some of you will, and I appreciate that, but there's just nothing more disheartening than when you're trying something different and it's just like, geez, nobody seems to be interested in this. You know what I mean? Does he have his own channel? I don't believe so, unless he's doing one secretly that I don't know about. But we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Saying just test the water. Yeah, we'll test the water. The next topic in line, I'm not going to spend too much time about this, but guys, I don't know, man. It's looking like this is exactly what's going to happen. When I tell you that this next topic I'm about to discuss disappoints me, what I mean by that is the content that we are discussing doesn't disappoint me. It's the reaction from the internet that I know we're going to get if it's actually true that disappoints me. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the Bloodborne rumors again. And I know, I'm right there with you. Like, oh my God, does it ever stop? Apparently with Bloodborne and Metal Gear Remake, no, it doesn't ever stop. It's like a weekly occurrence. But this is worth following up on. And if it wasn't important, or at least if I didn't think it was important, I wouldn't be mentioning it. But now I'm starting to think that, okay, I think Bluepoint Games is about to drop. Well, I say that as if it's going to be announced or released anytime soon, but Bluepoint Games, guys, I don't know how you are feeling about it. Bluepoint Games is working on Bloodborne 2. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you where this comes from. So, for those who have been following, first we had Colin Moriarty Now, Colin Moriarty is an interesting source because he is usually, I don't recall him ever being wrong about something, but he very rarely ever comes out and says, oh, I heard this from my source. He very rarely does that. And that's why I listen and I really pay attention anytime he gives any type of inside information, because the last 2 times he did it was he said, oh yeah, there's going to be a new Ratchet and Clank game, which was true. And then he said, and there's going to be a Demon's Souls remake from Bluepoint. And that was true. And now he is saying that, and I'm just refreshing anybody who didn't know, he said that he's heard from his source that Bluepoint is currently working on a Bloodborne PS5 remaster, and the original content that they're doing is Bloodborne 2. Now, we have another follow-up that comes from the individual that many of you may know, Special Nick, or Nick from the Xbox Era podcast. He is seemingly one of the only credible PlayStation insiders where he has been correct about numerous things in recent memory. If I'm not mistaken, he is the first person to reveal the Icky Island expansion, and that was recently. So I'm reading this from Reddit, and it says Nick of Xbox Era said on his podcast today that he heard Bluepoint Games are in fact making a PS5 remaster of the first Bloodborne game, and they are also developing a Bloodborne sequel, and that a PC port for Bloodborne is already finished. He said he corroborates this rumor with what Colin Moriarty of Last Stand Media said a couple of weeks ago, saying the same thing. Here's where things get even more interesting. This is reading from the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit, and they have, a pretty high tolerance level there. They don't just let anything fly. We have a mod from this Reddit thread called the Rabbit Scott. I think the Rabid Scott. He says, just leaving a comment to say that whilst Nick didn't comment this leak directly, he has shared proof with us privately that he did hear about these rumors. Moreover, it was shown to us just before Colin Moriarty actually commented on it a few weeks ago. So there's no chance Nick is bandwagoning with this, as I've seen a few users speculate. This rumor has more credibility than most, and Nick has indeed heard this information. So I had to follow up on this rumor with you guys because I think that when we first talked about this, I think a lot of people were like, Bluepoint Games doing Bloodborne 2? Bluepoint Games. And I'm like, oh boy. Now, you're probably wondering why, MBG, why before you dove into this topic, why did you say you're disappointed and you're just not feeling great about this topic? Recall what I said. It's because of the reaction we're going to get from the internet if this turns out to be true. It's extremely disappointing to me because, dude, I know how some fan bases are, and I understand that people are like, yeah, here we go. So Irfin, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. You're saying, MBG, if this rumor is true, many people will not be happy that Miyazaki is not going to be involved in the project. I really want Bluepoint to work on an original game. And then we also have 77 saying, after Demon's Souls, I have complete faith in Bluepoint. And that's my whole thing, man. Like, here's what's weird to me. I just want to say this. The only thing about this rumor, it's not that I don't believe it, because I believe this rumor wholeheartedly. Like this, it's true. This rumor has more credibility behind it than most other rumors do, man. All right. But what's weird to me is, if I recall correctly, I think when Miyazaki was asked out of the Soulsborne games, which one was his favorite, I'm pretty sure he said it was Bloodborne. It's really crazy to me to think that he wouldn't want to do Bloodborne 2 after Elden Ring. You know what I mean? Like, that's the part to me. You're saying Miyazaki will definitely be involved. He could be too. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we don't want to jump to conclusions where there could be more to this than we know, where it's like, he could be involved to an extent. You know what I mean? We can't jump to a conclusion and assume that if Bluepoint Games is working on a proper sequel to Bloodborne, that, well, From Software is going to have no involvement whatsoever. We don't know that. You're saying that he said in an interview he wants to make Bloodborne 2. That's what I'm saying. Who's to say Bluepoint, I should say, isn't working with Miyazaki? Yeah. Because the thing is it sounds like this Bloodborne sequel is many years away because apparently they're still working on a Bloodborne remaster. Darkborn, you're saying Bluepoint made a new game engine and netcode along with mocap for Demon Souls where a lot of ambiance is used on Bloodborne. I see it being a real thing. Dude, that's my thing, man, is like from a technical perspective, okay, I gotta tell you, I have all the faith in the world in Bluepoint Games delivering on a Bloodborne 2. I mean, you're saying Miyazaki said he isn't the one to decide for a Bloodborne 2. That is true. It's truly up to Sony because Sony owns the Bloodborne IP, but you have to imagine that Sony they're not ignorant to this, right? I'm sure Sony is, even Bluepoint, come on, they're not ignorant to the fact that if you announce a Bloodborne 2 that has zero involvement from Hidetaka Miyazaki or FromSoft, there's gonna be backlash. And that's what disappoints me about the gaming community sometimes, man, is like, I get it. I do get it. But come on, like, can we just not jump off the cliff with this stuff every time? It's like when people talk about a Metal Gear game without Kojima, like, I get it. I really do. I'm not saying we should just assume it's going to be great. I'm not saying that if Bluepoint Games is making a Bloodborne 2 that we should just assume it's going to be a masterpiece. We shouldn't do that either. But I just feel like jumping to the conclusion that, well, it's going to be bad. It's going to be terrible. I mean, can we give them a chance, you know? Although I will say the biggest argument that I see from people that I totally agree with is, well, how about rather than a sequel to Bloodborne and rather than another Metal Gear game, how about we just get something new and original? And you know what? That's completely fair. That's actually a great point where it's like, you know what? Yeah, I guess maybe we don't need a sequel to everything. We don't need another of this. Maybe we just need a new thing. But I do agree with the individual who said after seeing what Bluepoint Games was able to do with Demon Souls, I mean, man, it was incredibly impressive, dude. It really was. So to think about what they could do with a Bloodborne sequel, you're saying I hate the gaming community for this. They will absolutely hate it, even if it's great, just because Miyazaki isn't involved. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I think it would be fair for people to be skeptical. Like if Bluepoint Games announces we're doing Bloodborne 2 and people are like, I don't know. I think that's totally fair. Like, okay, be skeptical. They have to prove it to you, right? But yeah, that's the thing that would suck is that they make a Bloodborne 2 and it's like, oh my God, they nailed it. This is fantastic. This is everything I hoped it would be. And then you will have those people who are like, but it's not Miyazaki, so it's trash. And it's like, come on. Like, come on. You know? Like, you hate to see stuff like that. If Miyazaki is the lead director, the game would sell easily over 1 million copies in its first week. Oh, dude, Bloodborne 2 would be huge. I think Bloodborne 2 will be huge either way, but my whole thing with this is I think that if this is real, and I do believe it's real, if when Bluepoint Games, they come out and they're like, okay, it's time to announce Bloodborne 2, I think they do it one way. And I think it's at a PlayStation event, maybe in like 2023 or something. I mean, who knows? Maybe it could even be announced next year if it's true. But it'll be like in 2023. And it's just a gameplay demo. It's just a 7 to 10 minute raw gameplay demo. And people immediately realize, like, when it comes up on screen that, oh my God, this is Bloodborne 2. And people lose their minds. And then once that gameplay demo is over, the screen flashes Bluepoint Games. And I think that they'll have to put From Software up there as well. Because I think From Software, no matter what, even if it's just consultation, right, they'll have to be involved. And I think that's how you stop people from being negative about the idea of Bluepoint Games handling a Bloodborne 2, because it's about the proof being in the pudding, right? Like how could you be upset if you see Bloodborne 2 revealed and the first thing you see is a gameplay demo of it, and you're like literally you feeling like you're on ecstasy or something because you're like, this is a dream come true. Bloodborne 2, it's happening. I can't believe it. And you love it, just to then turn around and be like, wait a second. Wait, From Software isn't making it? I hate it. You know what I mean? Like, there will always be people who are like that, but I feel like if Bluepoint really is working on this, I think this is how you... and I think them starting with a Bloodborne remaster is really good as well, because I think if they give Bloodborne the same treatment that they gave Demon Souls, I know Bloodborne's a much newer game. It's from the PS4 generation, but still, there's a lot that could be done to it. If they can do that with Bloodborne on the PS5, I think that'll give people a lot more confidence for sure. So MBG isn't From Software working on a new game after Elden Ring. Well, the rumor as of right now, and there's no credibility to this rumor, it's just something that's been circulating, is From Software's next title after Elden Ring is a PlayStation 5 exclusive under the codename Velvet Veil. And from what we heard, it's supposed to be again, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but it's supposed to be a spiritual successor to Bloodborne, which it makes me wonder, like, is this going to be a joint project? Is that what Velvet Veil is? It's actually Bloodborne 2, and it's going to be worked on by both Bluepoint and FromSoft. I could see that. Sir Holmes. Well, actually, hold on. We have Darkborn again. Thank you, buddy, for all the super chats. You're saying financially, it would be smart to double up on that new game engine and assets that PlayStation just purchased, along with talent from that acquisition. I agree that you can tell that there was a lot of development time and effort that went into the complete rebuilding of all of those assets. Sir Holmes, you're saying Forza running on Series X looks like poop. Now you can see how impressive GT7 looks. We need more multiplayer games. That's the point of PS Plus. Wake up. I don't know if I agree with you about Forza, man. I saw some previews of Forza Horizon 5, and I'm just going to be honest, man. The game looks incredible. It looks incredible. It's one of the best looking games I've ever seen in terms of like the environments. I mean, it makes me excited to see what Fable's going to look like. So I'm just being honest. Like, I think GT7 looks incredible as well. I think they both look really good. But I was definitely impressed with the environments of... You're saying it was downgraded from what they showed? Was it? I don't know. I would have to go back and look. I mean, hey, I'm impressed, right? Isn't that what matters at the end of the day? Question mark, you're saying, in all seriousness, do you think without the original creators of the game that it would be an amazing game? I think from a gameplay standpoint, yes. From a visual standpoint, yes. I think the big question marks would be the lore, obviously, the lore of Bloodborne, and the bosses and the creatures. I think like those are the two things, in my opinion, that Bluepoint would really have to. I mean, they would really have to prove something in that area, and I think that's what would make it exciting in a way, because it's like if you give a developer something where it's like, you got to prove something here. I mean, that's going to light a fire under them and really push them, and I see what you're saying, Hanzo. You're saying Bluepoint wouldn't disrespect the name or lore of Bloodborne. I agree with that. I think Bluepoint has earned the chance at this point with any franchise. Like when we thought for a long time that Bluepoint may be working on a Metal Gear remake, I did speculate, what if they're making Metal Gear Solid 6? And I know that sounded crazy, but it turns out, if this other rumors to be believed, that's not crazy at all. It seems like they're continuing something. I think they earned that. But you know what? I'm going to end that topic there. I did say I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I may talk about this in a separate video because I feel it's only fair to kind of, maybe I'll do it in one of my news videos, but it really depends on how sparse the news actually is. But I wanted to be sure to update you guys with this Magnum Visuals, you're saying Bluepoint already has their Demon Souls engine they built, which they can use and update for a faster turnaround. Yeah, that's a point that Darkborn made, and I think it's just a point that it just makes sense, right? It just makes sense. Hold on one sec, guys. Sorry, I'm trying not to use my phone during the stream. There's just some messages that are... Anyway, okay, so we're going to move... We have a lot of other stuff to go through before this podcast comes to an end, so I'm going to try to speed it up just a little bit here. So the next topic in line that we have here is... Let me see. Okay, we got Bluepoint and Bloodborne. We got the Sony growth mode. Okay, so this is actually a great follow-up question. Not question, but topic. But we're going to have some questions that need answering because, okay, have you guys... Well, first of all, how many of you here are excited for Elden Ring? Because we just talked about Bloodborne. How many of you are excited for Elden Ring? Because me, I'm extremely excited for Elden Ring. And it turns out that there was the first gameplay leak, and I have to put that in quotations because it's technically a gameplay leak. But I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about. Essentially, 30 seconds of gameplay. Man, my throat is killing me. I can't tell if I'm sick. I feel like I've been a little bit sick the past couple days. But I'm very excited for Elden Ring, as you all know. And we had the first gameplay clip leak out. And so I'm going to read from this article here. This is from PlayStation Lifestyle, a 27-second clip showcasing, Elden Ring, reportedly running on the Xbox One, has appeared online. While the video has been scrubbed from several YouTube channels, it's still available on Twitter. We're embedding the tweets we found below, and so you can find it if you want. However, if the clips are removed by the time you get this article, there's also a reset error thread. It's not... Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. It's not worth checking out because it shows you nothing. But it says here, according to journalist Jeff Grubb, this footage is a few weeks old, so it's like an older build. He reckons that it's the Xbox One X version based on the frame rate, and he thinks a low-quality capture hardware has been used. Nevertheless, people had mixed reactions to this leak, with some expressing disappointment as others remain confident that the final product will meet expectations. And you know what? Like, I'm not, as you can tell, like, I don't plan to rant a lot during this episode because there's not much to rant about, and I'm not going to get all worked up, but I just want to say this. I think it's completely fair. I think it's completely fair for anybody who is excited for Elden Ring to see this footage and maybe feel a little bit disheartened for one reason or another. I think that's totally fair, but what people need to understand is that this is leaked footage, okay? By that, it means it was never supposed to be seen by the public, and there's a reason for that. Because if you go watch this 27-second clip video, I mean, it's literally the worst possible impression that it could give you. It's literally of a person who seems to be at the main hub world, standing on some rocks, and the biggest thing that everybody was focused on is, oh my God, he's jumping. They were jumping. There's a jump button. So that's kind of how you know, like, okay, I don't think this is... Some people were thinking that this was like it wasn't real, but you can jump. But people started to really complain, and there were a couple of big complaints that I saw, which I'll get to in just a moment. We have Sir Holmes. You're saying PS Plus and Xbox Live were created to pay for multiplayer and voice chat servers. So if Sony is only giving us single player, why are we paying for PS Plus? Well, because you have to understand, Sir Holmes, that Sony is banking on a lot of people wanting to play third-party multiplayer games, but it's worth noting that Sony has a bunch of multiplayer games in the pipeline right now. So I know that right now it seems like there's not many, and that's not really Sony's bread and butter, nor do I think it will be at any point, but they have a lot more coming. So no worries, Sar Holmes. Don't get me wrong. I wish we didn't have to pay for PS Plus or Xbox Live to play multiplayer games, but if you're looking for that as justification, it's coming. But getting back on topic here. So the two main complaints that I saw were this, okay? The first complaint was the way the game looked. A lot of people were feeling very unimpressed with just the graphical quality, the textures, and it looked very much last gen. And the other complaint was that if you look at the clip, it looks like it's Dark Souls. It's a Souls game. Like the movement, just everything, it's Souls. All right. And I'm not here to really defend this that much because I don't think that there's really, like, I haven't played the game. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't played the game, so I can't come out here and be like, guys, I played like 15 minutes of it and it's amazing. You can't go by this. But there's a few things we have to acknowledge here. The first is, like I said, it's a 27-second clip of a guy just jumping in the hub world, and then it ends. It's as unexciting as it gets. It's captured on an Xbox One X, apparently. So it's not going to look as good as it could if it was captured on, say, a Series X or a PS5. We also have to understand, well, you know what? You don't have to understand this, but I'll just talk from my perspective. When I first heard about Elden Ring, I was a little bit disappointed. I know, that's crazy. That's blasphemous. But the reason was because I thought, one of the things that I didn't like, people ask me all the time, why don't you play Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice? And one of the reasons was because it felt like it deviated too far away from the Soulsborne formula that I love and I seemingly can't get enough of. And I'll have to probably get around to trying it out someday, but that's just the truth. It made me feel like, I don't know, like this doesn't look like I was ready. I know it sounds crazy, but I'm like, I'm ready for Dark Souls 4 or Bloodborne 2. And they come out and like, here's Sekiro. And I'm like, but I don't know. I didn't really want that, And I know I'm disrespectful. I know, but hey, it won Game of the Year. Apparently it's a phenomenal game. I have to get around to playing it at some point. Apparently it's crazy. And yeah, I agree. Gameplay is king. And so when I first heard about Elden Ring, I was a little bit disappointed because I was like, oh, they're doing it again. I was like, they're going in a different direction. Like I'm ready for more Souls, man. I'm ready for more Bloodborne or Demon Souls, whatever. Like, I just love it so much. I want more of it. I feel like I can never get enough. And then, like, as we started to learn more about Elden Ring, I'm like, yo, this is open world Dark Souls. I'm like, this is basically Dark Souls 4, just like new lore and everything. I'm like, but that's what this is. And then at this point in time, after everything we've heard and seen, I'm like, dude, my hype for this game, because it's essentially Dark Souls open world, that's why I'm so hyped. That's why I'm so excited. That is exactly what I wanted. And that's exactly what I was hoping for. And I understand that not everybody's going to feel that way. I get it. Like, I know that there are some people where they're like, they're looking at this gameplay and they're like, this literally just looks like Dark Souls 4 and it's open world. And I get that not everybody wants that. I get that there are people who are like, I wanted something completely new, something completely different formula, but that's just not how I feel. And so I just can't agree with, while I can understand some of the complaints and some of the concerns, I just simply can't agree with them because I fully suspect that when I boot up Elden Ring day one, because, oh yes, it's going to be day one, and I'm thinking about streaming it, maybe even doing a Let's Play. I don't know, man. I'm super hyped for Elden Ring. When I do that, I don't expect to look at the game and the environments and be like, well, this doesn't look very good. I mean, at worst case scenario, I could see myself saying, okay, this doesn't look as next gen as I would have hoped. But come on, can we just be honest for a second? The Soulsborne games are not, like, they're just not really the games you go to when you're talking about the best looking games in the industry. Like, I think we can, like, they look beautiful. The art style is second to none. Okay. Like, but I think we can all agree that they're not looked at as like when people saw Demon Souls, the reason why they were so shocked is because it looked better than any game, like visually. I'm talking visually. It looked better than any game that From Software has made. They're like, whoa. And like people were like shocked when they saw that there was like facial animation, or like, yo, From Software never did that. And that's why people were so impressed. But that's, to me, like that's not why people go to From Software games. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not how I view From Software. That's not how I view the Souls games. It's just not. To me, it really is gameplay is king, man. The world is king. Everything is king in that game. And it's everything that is king in that game. I mean, it's not the visuals. And if the visuals end up looking great, then that's just like, that's a bonus. You know, like, I don't know, man. I just feel like people, they're being a little bit, I don't want to say harsh, but I really do believe that when From Software, when they come out here and they're like, okay, here's that 15-minute gameplay demonstration of Elden Ring that we've been waiting to show you, I just think people are going to look at it and they're going to be like, yes, like there it is. Like their excitement is going to go right back to where it was previously, because this is why companies, this is why game devs, you know, people wonder why like stuff doesn't leak or game devs get so upset and they get so disheartened. It's because of stuff like this, man. You know, where it's like, if this was me, if I worked on a game for years and I was like, this is going to be the best thing we ever make, just to see a 30-second clip of somebody jumping on some rocks on the last gen version of the game on an old build, and then look at what people are saying and basically being like, yo, that looks bad. I'd be devastated. But at the same time, I do think that, you know, it's From Software, guys. Like they're gonna deliver. Like I'm gonna ask my chat because I'm curious, and you can leave a comment as well if you want. Does anybody really think that they're not going to deliver with Elden Ring? That's the last thing I have to say about this topic. I just want to ask, like, does anybody, and I'm being serious, like, if you think they're not going to deliver, tell me why. You know, because for me, I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that From Software is absolutely going to deliver with Elden Ring. You're saying you're worried? Saying Elden Ring will be an 8 out of 10 at least? I mean, I'd be happy with that. Yeah, I think that's the big question with Elden Ring. Can it trump Dark Souls? I don't think so. Maybe it can. I don't know. It'll be fine. You have no reason to doubt them. Absolutely not. Miyazaki hasn't failed us. Should be great. So, you're saying, MBG, look at my YouTube link. Unfortunately, it doesn't give me the ability to click links from the chat. You're saying they will, but washed up graphics are inexcusable. I mean, don't get me wrong. Well, here's the thing, and this is the final thing I'll say. If it comes out and it's like the biggest negative of the game is graphically it looks a little dated, or maybe even really dated, or it just doesn't look as good as it should in 2022, right? If that's the biggest complaint, I can live with that. And if anything, it's like, if I had to choose any area of a game to be lacking in, it would be that. You know what I mean? Because that's something that they can fix pretty easily. You can't fix bad, I mean, you can fix bad game design, but it's very difficult. You know what I'm saying? So, we talking Elden Ring? We're about to move on from this topic, but yeah, we were talking Elden Ring. Magnum Visuals are saying, would you be hyped for a Kingsfield remake? I'm not familiar with Kingsfield, so I want to say, yeah, I would be. Why not? But I'm not too familiar with it. similar to like Demon Souls. Like when I first saw Demon Souls, I never had any experience with it, but I was super hyped when I saw it. X Gamers, you're saying if the multiplayer is updated, it'll be good. Oh, guys, I had a question before I move on to the next topic. I'm hoping somebody can answer this for me. If not, I'll have to look into it when I'm done the podcast. I know that Elden Ring is going to have co-op multiplayer. Do we know if this is going to be the same as Dark Souls and Bloodborne and Demon Souls multiplayer, where it's kind of like instance-based, where it's going to be for like just boss battles and then they disappear, and then if you want to keep playing with your buddy, you have to resummon him for the next boss battle? Or is it just going to be like you can play through the whole game pretty much co-op? That's the big question I have with that. So maybe somebody can let me know. You can summon people to join you in dungeons. Okay, that sounds pretty instance-based. Yes, it will be the same, according to Miyazaki. Okay. You're saying, yeah, I feel like that's something we really need some more information on, because I'm dying to know about that. I mean, it would be crazy if you could just play the whole game co-op, but I feel like it's not designed to be played that way, so therefore you won't be able to. If you do that, though, the dungeon won't scale up, right? I don't know. We'll have to see. I'll obviously, if we get an update from them, I'll let you guys know, because it seems like a lot of you are confused as well. You can roam with friends, but mounts are disabled online. Okay. Oh, okay. Dude, that's funny if that's true. I think you're right. Yeah, I think I remember reading that. So basically, you can invite 2 people, maybe, or 3 people to come play the game with you, but you have to manually run from one area of the map to the other, and it'll take forever. And that's how you stay together the whole time. That would be crazy if you could play it that way. But it kind of sounds like you can. Did I play Heavy Rain and Alan Wake? I have not. Games I have to get to, especially Alan Wake. All right. So next topic in line. Let's see if we have time to cover the rest. Okay, so I have 2 more topics lined up. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to both of them, so I'll pick the one that I think is a little bit more relevant to the channel, I guess. Some new information regarding some upcoming Xbox titles have surfaced, and I did see some people asking my opinion on this. Apparently, Avowed is going to be a Skyrim-like RPG with colorful and destructible environments. Meanwhile, Compulsion Games has confirmed that their next game is a third-person single-player title. So a lot, people are asking me like, dude, what do you think about all this information about Avowed that has come out? And so I do have a Reddit post here where it says Jez Corden backs up Clobriel's claim that Compulsion is working on a dark fantasy third-person action adventure and some other things. So these are just some things that apparently have come out about some of Microsoft's projects. And so we're going to just go down the list here. I know that we are mainly a PlayStation podcast, but I got to say, like, when it comes to the Xbox side of things, I'm more interested to see like how the newer stuff ends up panning out, because people ask me like, dude, how come you're not hyped for like Halo? And it's just, well, Halo isn't my thing, and we already know what Forza is. I'm more interested to see what Xbox does with the new games, the new stuff. So after hearing Clobriel already leaked Compulsion's project, he confirms that he is correct. Other Xbox news: 120 people are working on Avowed, and 120 are working on Outer Worlds 2. So that's pretty interesting. Those are some pretty big teams on each game. Confirms that spell animations shown in the trailer are all in the game. Obsidian wants to make 1 game per year for the next 7 years, so throughout the entire gen. That's certainly ambitious. Apparently, they have seen Outer Worlds 2 early gameplay, says it looks a lot tighter than the first one. IO Interactive's game Project Dragon is fully confirmed to be going ahead. They even leaked it themselves through their job listings. He's heard things about Hellblade 2, says it's much broader in scope than the first. Should see it by the end of the year. I hope that's true. That's the game I'm probably most excited for. It's tied up there with State of Decay 3, but the idea, I kind of always got that impression with Hellblade 2, is that it's going to be much wider in scope, like a much more ambitious game. than the first one. And I think the fact that it's still in such early production is a good indication of that. So that's good to know. Let me see. It continues by saying leaked 2 project codenames Shaolin and Belfry. So make of that what you will. State of Decay 3 is intended to have a big focus on narrative and your connection to the characters, make them feel less like tools. Man, I can't wait to get more information about State of Decay 3. I really hope Undead Labs knocks it out of the park, dude. I've always thought that the State of Decay concept, like it's a winning concept. I love that world. I think that it's full of so much potential. I can't wait to see what they do with it. So, but it sounds like it's still a ways off. Continues by saying Xbox is publishing a title by a small indie studio that have made a bunch of popular games before. He won't leak who it is because he believes it may be revealed soon. And Xbox is apparently working with a Nordic studio called Mainframe on a cloud-native MMO. So, yeah, that's pretty much just a rundown of like new Xbox info, apparently. And so my thoughts on some of this, talking about Avowed, it's interesting because when I see people talk about Avowed, they seemingly get like there's like a mixed response. I see people who are very much like, who cares? It's a game that's years away. But then there also seems to be a group of people that are very much excited for it. I'm going to be honest, like Avowed is not a game so it's one of these weird situations. When it comes to Skyrim-like RPGs or like Bethesda RPGs, I don't really care about them that much. Like Avowed is not a game I'm excited for, but I am very much interested to see like how it pans out. Does that make sense? Do you guys ever have those types of games where it's like, these are not games that I really am interested in playing, but I'm very interested in just kind of seeing like how they pan out, like what, how people feel about them. And I don't know, I'm always open to being pleasantly surprised. Like Starfield to me is one of those games where it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be interested in it. And I know that people will be like, but if it was a PlayStation exclusive, I bet you would be. I mean, maybe, I play most of my games on PlayStation. I am more open to trying out PlayStation exclusives than going over to a different place to play that I'm just not really trying to play, be heavily involved in that ecosystem. So I'd probably be a little bit more interested, but in general, a game like Starfield, like that's one where it's like, when we see gameplay of that for the first time, it's either going to be like, wow, I really actually am impressed and I feel like I got to play this game day one, or it has my interest, or I'm going to see it and I'm going to be like, oh yeah, it looks like Skyrim in space. And I'm not a Skyrim fan. So, you know what I mean? That's just how it is for me. But there are some like Compulsions game. I think We Happy Few had a lot of potential as well. And the fact that they're part of Microsoft, they're working on a single player game, Hellblade single player, Compulsion Games is going to be single player. These are the titles where I'm like, okay, like I'm interested to see what you're doing. I can't wait to see more of State of Decay 3. And in general, I'm feeling more positive about Xbox as we get closer to some of these new games like Redfall. I don't know about Redfall, I feel like it looks like it's going to be good, but I'm always skeptical of like the looter shooter type games. Some of them I really enjoy. Others I played, I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. So yeah, I don't know. You're saying MBG, they are all in pre-production. Yeah, that's the thing is, that's why I haven't really been talking about Xbox much lately, because I know that it's like a joke where it's like, every week there's more PlayStation related rumors where it's like the Metal Gear rumor, the Silent Hill rumor, the Kojima rumor, this rumor, the Bloodborne rumor. I get it. It is a meme at this point. It is a joke. But to be honest, things haven't been that much different for Microsoft as well, except the difference is it seems that all the information we just went over, I think it's legitimate. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think these are rumors. These are coming from people who are clearly very well connected with Xbox and what's going on there with their teams. So it's like when we hear that, this is what Avowed is going to be like, it's like, I think we can trust that. So there is that, but I still feel like when it comes to Xbox, I feel like I have to have patience and wait and see. Like, I don't know, man. Everybody really loved Xbox's E3 this year, and I agree that it was one of their better E3s in a long time, man. Like, they did really nail it. But I just got this general sense where it was like, they were like, all right, let's unload, and it's like, dude, the best part of that E3 for me was when we saw the Outer Worlds 2 trailer, where it literally made fun of the fact that we don't have anything ready. Literally nothing. In fact, all of this stuff you're seeing in the trailer is not real. We just have a logo to let you know we're making this game. I thought that was really funny and very self-aware, but it also kind of highlighted one of the reasons why I just couldn't feel as excited as some other people. But I feel like if you're an Xbox fan, man, it's hard not to be excited, to be honest. Like, it really is. Like, I feel like the big thing for me as a PlayStation enthusiast is when I look at the way PlayStation's been delivering from the PS4 generation going into the PS5 generation, looking at, the way we started this podcast out talking about 2022 and how strong it looks for Sony. That's the thing that has always gotten me so excited when being involved with PlayStation, is just the sheer amount of games and the sheer quality of those games. Truly exciting, and I feel like Xbox fans are finally getting to that point where it's like, yeah, they're starting to feel that, and I'm happy for them. I mean, I'm happy for me as well. Somebody who's always been wanting Xbox to do better. I think that it's nice that they're finally at that point where, like, there was a big rough patch. Things really didn't, were not going well, but now they have a lot of studios, they have a lot of developers, and they got a lot of content in the works, and so I'm just very much, I don't know about you guys, and I'll end this topic here because I got to do at least a few more community submissions before we end the podcast. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this console generation has gotten off to the strangest start possible. I just feel like things have come to some kind of weird slowdown that has been created due to the pandemic and the scarcity issue and the way the pandemic has impacted the development of games. And I just feel like it's slowed down so much. Like, I remember last year, dude, the hype levels were like, dude, like, I can't believe how excited everybody is. And then, like, here we are pretty much a year later, and it's like, well, 2022. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just, and I'm not saying that as in, like, Sony has done a great job delivering content since the launch of the PS5, but it just feels like we're kind of like, there's been a delay to the generation. Does that make sense? Am I the only one who feels that way? I feel like there's been an overall delay to the generation where it's like, we went into this generation thinking PS5 exclusives, PS5 is going to push the limit. We're going to see this crazy stuff. And we got some great stuff so far. But now it's kind of like, well, actually, Horizon, it's also going to be on PS4. No problem. Still just as excited. Dude, you're calling... Dude, that's funny, man. I'm not going to lie. That made me laugh. It caught my eye. Dude, you're calling Forza Flopza. I love it, dude. I love it. Dude, I love when people come up with these bizarre names, like, for any PlayStation games, Xbox games, and they just sound so ridiculous, man. Flopza. That just sounds wrong, dude. That just sounds wrong. I love it, though. But yeah, I feel like for both Microsoft and Sony, it just feels like next gen has been delayed to an extent. I could be wrong. You're saying this generation arrived almost 1 to 2 years earlier. It does feel like that a little bit, doesn't it? It really does. I say this because, I don't know, I feel like with previous generations, it just didn't feel like it took this long to get off to the races, I guess you could say. I could be wrong, though, because my memory of previous generations could very much be altered, or not my memory, but my perception of this current generation could very much be altered because this is the first console generation where I'm really this involved. Like, I was always very involved, but Now I have a YouTube channel. I'm following the news every day. I feel like I wasn't following it as closely. So maybe it's because of that. I kind of just didn't recognize that actually, no, this is what every console generation is like. You're just feeling it more so this time around. That could be, you know. iSiler18, you're saying after the COD and Battlefield beta, the rest of the year is kind of in shambles. Ironically, Halo might take it away, which I'm looking forward to. Oh, dude, yeah, okay. So I'm gonna do just a few more community submissions before I end the podcast. But guys, I gotta tell you, I am very not feeling. I'm very disappointed with Battlefield 2042. I say this as a long time Battlefield player. I've been playing since Bad Company 1. So I've been playing for many years, and I don't know, man. I tried. I really did. I played a bunch of games, and I'm just like, this just doesn't feel like Battlefield to me. You know? It just doesn't. You're asking me, you love Battlefield, you're not sure you're asking me what's disappointing about it. It's hard to explain, man. I don't know if I'm just growing out of shooters. I feel like that's not it. I mean, I don't know. One of the biggest things that stood out to me with this Battlefield beta, that to me, it was just like, this doesn't feel like it, man, was how sterile the map felt. When I think about my time playing like past Battlefield games, I think that the map design, along with the gunplay, was one of the things that really made me feel like this is Battlefield, man. Like, this is what makes Battlefield. And when I played it, yeah, and you're no classes, they're going with like a specialist like system. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, come on, man. That was one of the best things about Battlefield. It's like one of those core fundamental things of Battlefield where it's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But the map was terrible. I don't know why. Like, I was playing Battlefield 2042 and I'm like, this feels like the most generic, sterile map I've ever played. I'm like, what did they do with their map design, man? Like, it has no flair whatsoever. And it literally just made me, yeah, and the bots are like brain dead. And I'm having these weird encounters where I'm like, okay, I just killed a bunch of bots, and I know I killed a bunch of bots because they're just brain dead. And then I'm playing real, and then it alters my ability to play efficiently because I start to think, oh, I'm really good. And then I like underestimate the next enemy I see because it's a real person, and they just drop me, and I'm like, oh, okay, that wasn't a bot. I had this problem with PUBG. I played PUBG for a long time. They brought in bots, and oh my God, it really messes with you, man. So yeah, I just remember when I was playing Battlefield 2042, it got me thinking. It brought me back to Bad Company 2. It brought me back to Battlefield 3. And I'm like remembering the map designs in those games and just how much more detail there seemingly was and how much more interesting they were. And the battles just felt more intense. And I don't know, man. A lot of people are saying that Halo won it this year, and it seems like maybe they did. Who would have thought, man? And I'm not trying to discourage anybody. Like, I've seen a lot of people say to me, like, dude, I love the Battlefield 2042 beta. By all means, man, if you loved it, embrace it, enjoy it. I'm not trying to ruin it for anybody. I'm just giving my own thoughts and my own opinion. And for me, it just didn't hit the mark. That's all. So yeah, I wasn't expecting that. With that being said, though, I'm going to do just a few more community submissions here. Probably going to go through them relatively quickly because this podcast is going on quite long. Let me see. So this was an interesting one. This comes from DDP 540. And he says, what do you think of the proposal of buying DLC for a game you don't even own? I never thought about it until this Forza news that Game Pass Ultimate does not include any of the premium content. This is very unlike Gears 5 when the Game Pass version came with the Ultimate Edition, Hivebusters DLC, and early access to the game. So this was actually a really interesting question because I wasn't aware that this was the situation. So basically, I haven't looked into it, so I'm taking your word for it that this is what it's like. Basically, what we're seeing is a situation where if you are subscribed to Game Pass and you get access to Forza Horizon 5, you're playing Horizon 5 and then you want to get the DLC and you buy the DLC, which I have to make it known, I don't know how much the DLC is for Forza. I'm assuming it's like $30 or something. Maybe it's more than that. But we have this weird situation where you are being given the opportunity, as he says, to buy DLC for a game you don't own. And to be honest, you're saying it's $50. Okay. Yeah, that Forza 5 DLC is $50. That's all. What? That's a lot. You guys messing with me? That's a lot of, actually, isn't that relatively normal for the Forza games? Because you get like a bunch of stuff. I don't know. Either way, that's a lot of money. That's like the price of a game. All right. It is really, really strange to me that that's an option, because what Microsoft is doing is and I think they know what they're doing, because if you think about it, they're like, hey, subscribe to Game Pass, play this game. If you like it, we have $50 worth of DLC. And of course, they want you to buy that $50 worth of DLC, which is fine. I'm assuming it'll be worth it. You have to assume at that price it'll be worth it, right? But if you do that, you don't own the game. And so if you ever unsubscribe from Game Pass, you're going to have all like $50 worth of DLC for a game you don't own physically or digitally. So I think the idea behind it is they want to leverage this opportunity, if you want to put it that way. They want you to essentially, like, I don't know, man. All I can figure is they want to use it as a way to get you to buy the game. That's all I can figure, because like, I guess it's like, well, as long as you're subscribed to Game Pass, you technically just paid for the DLC. You're saying it's not $60, it's $10 to $20 MBG. Well, I don't, I'm going to be honest. I don't think you're saying it's the premium edition MBG that's $45. Okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I don't think that the price is relevant. I think what's relevant is just the fact that you have the opportunity to buy DLC for a game that you don't own. And that is a unique position that I feel like only Game Pass could put you in. But if you think about it, I think it could work. I know that sounds crazy. I wouldn't want to go about it that way. But I think that there are people out there where if they are enjoying Forza 5, to a lot of people, you know how people always talk about, oh, Game Pass is free. Game Pass is free. It's not free, but it sure can feel like it is, right? And that's the thing about these services. And that's where they kind of get you, where it's like you become subscribed to them and you just don't think about the money that's leaving your account. It's just not a thought that occurs anymore. You just go on and you see, oh, here's new games. And it feels like you're getting them for free. You're technically not, but you feel that way. And so I could certainly see there being a group of people that play Forza Horizon 5 and they're like, oh my God, this is great. And they do everything in the game and they're like, I want some DLC. And then they buy the DLC and they own that DLC, but they don't own the game. But because they're subscribed to Game Pass, it doesn't matter. That's just how they play their DLC. And I think that the only time they'll ever care is if they unsubscribe from Game Pass and then they come to the reality like, oh, wait, I don't own Forza Horizon 5. Then I'll have to either resubscribe to Game Pass or buy it. I think if anything, it might be a way to kind of keep people tied to Game Pass in a way where if you think about it, it's kind of smart. If you think about it like, hey, if people buy our DLC, and they ever unsubscribe and they want to go back and play that game, they'll find out that their DLC is tied. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess I could see that being the situation. Let me see. And I'll end the podcast with this community submission. It's a very simple one. Tyler Outland says, MBG question for Sunday. If you have time to answer in the podcast, how long do you think the length of Horizon Forbidden West will be? Like, how long will the game be? And I thought that this was an interesting question because, we've been talking at length about these upcoming games we're excited about, Horizon Forbidden West. I think it's going to be a solid 25 to 30 hours of like story-driven content and side quest gameplay. I think maybe with the side quests, I could see it being like 45 to 50 hours. I feel like if you're trying to be a completionist, I could see it going to 70 plus hours. I mean, I have literally, I think, over like 100 hours in Ghost of Tsushima so far. So I think it's going to be a long game. I think at the very least, if you're somebody who just cares about the main story content, I think between 20 and 30 hours, I could see it going. I mean, it's going to be a big game, man. So I could see it going further than that, maybe 30 to 35 hours of just raw, like meaningful, like base content. But yeah, that's what I think. So yeah, sorry, Space Gambler Jr. I know I'm pressed for time right now. I'm not going to be able to cover GTA. I will have to remove that from my description, which I'll probably do that right now while I'm thinking about it so I don't forget. But maybe I'll talk about it in a separate video. But yeah, we have some details about that. Maybe, like I said, I'll talk about it in a separate video. But that's going to do it for episode 80 of Press X Podcast. Again, I do apologize, guys. Essentially, I apologize for the fact that there wasn't much to talk about. There wasn't much news, but we still made it work. I appreciate everybody who submitted a community submission. Definitely helped out during this episode of the podcast. A big thank you to every one of you who donate super chats. It really goes a long way in helping out the channel and keeping it floating, you know, and keeping it going. And to all of my members, it's okay if you know, to all those who aren't super chatting and you're not members, that's okay. I appreciate you just as much. You guys are the viewers, the audience. You help bring it all together. So really, now you're going all in now. Flopsa and Stalo, I don't know, dude. You're going too far with these names, but I appreciate all of the support. The last thing I'm going to ask you guys to do before you head out is please just consider leaving the podcast a like. Hit that like button. It definitely helps it out. But there we go. That's episode 80 in the books. I'm hoping that by next week, when we come back here and we reconvene, there's going to be more to talk about. Because, man, this past week, it's been so dry. So hopefully some things will pick up during the week. And thank you for that donation, OK Kapapa. Really appreciate it. But all right, guys, as I always say, until next time, take care.